We're here today with Farmer Tim. He hails from Rockwood, Ontario. Tim's a fourth-generation farmer. He is a speaker, a social media advocate. He's got 131,000 followers as of today.
Yeah, that's on Facebook.
Good.
I haven't been, yeah.
He's got a degree in animal science from the U of G. He is passionate about agriculture, about education, and that's actually how he got his name, Farmer Tim, from the kids. And he has awards from the Farm and Food Champion Award, Jersey, Canada Certificate of Recognition, and then the King Charles III Coronation Medal that he received in Ottawa. So he's got all the stats behind him. And just to start off this, when I was online reading Tim's bio, I got a chuckle. It says, Tim's sense of humor, wisdom, transparency has been key to building public trust with his followers. And I'm like, he's got a really good PR guy that I need to get a hold of. So without further ado, here is Farmer Tim, and we're going to have a phenomenal discussion today.
Wow, thanks neighbor, for having me here.
So Tim, we are going to start with the and thank you for this too, by the way.
Little stress cow.
Yeah, and if anybody wants one of these, just send us a link, okay?
You can always come over and hug a real cow or squeeze a real cow.
Yes,
Gently.
that should be your tagline.
Gently, yeah.
So, fourth generation farmer.
Yes.
Tell us about that. Tell us about, how it started.
How it started, eh? So
great.
Yeah, somewhere one of those greats way back. My family came over from Europe and Scotland, England, Ireland. I've traced some of that back. Most of them settled in Halton County. Yeah. My dad and my mom both had separate dairy farms in Hornby in Halton County. My mom's farm was actually the Hornby Towers golf course. I don't know if you know where that is, but it became a golf course. And then my dad kind of got pushed out, expropriated in a way. And he moved to Rockwood about 54 years ago.
So he had his farm in Hornby. What happened?
It's a big subdivision shopping mall area now on Dairy Road. I'm not sure exactly where it is. He took me by it before he passed to show me, and it's just houses. You can't really tell. So I have an aerial photo I found recently of the farm, and they're actually rebuilding it. So it's not there anymore, but I work with the Ontario historical farm buildings, barn preservation group, that's what it's called, and they help preserve farms, and they understand they sometimes have to be taken down because they're not in good shape, but they'll help you if you want to restore them, but they also want to preserve the memory of them. So if you're going to take your barn down, then they will do blueprints of it. But in my dad's case, it's kind of cool. They took an aerial photo to get the square footage and everything. And then my dad did a little sketch of what the inside of the barn looked like before he passed away. Yeah. And they're taking all that and they're kind of reconstructing it so it'll stay in a database. So it's kind of neat. They're doing some other farms around here.
You see some of those in books. Like I remember selling a place on Fifth Line, Nassagaweya. I can't remember the owner, who I think it was Bill Gregg. And he had one of the largest swing arm beams.
Swing beams, yes.
He had moved the barn from another location out in London area, and he had the swing arm beam was in this book.
Oh, that's really cool.
We had the history when we sold the property, so it was cool.
And I know the book probably because I'm doing the foreword for the second version of the book. Yeah. Of the gentleman who's writing it. It's probably Hugh Fraser that wrote the book, but he specializes in swing beam barns.
That's cool.
So anyway, I digress. But anyway, so then my sister was born in Hornby.
So your parents, what's their full names?
So
what's your mom's maiden name?
My mom's is a Rigglesworth.
Rigglesworth.
So that's a real English name.
That would have been good for the kids to Farmer Rigglesworth.
Rigglesworth, yeah, Rigglesworth. And then my dad's May, right? So Paul May was his name, and Elmer was his grandpa. So my mom was Margaret Diane May. My dad was Elmer Paul May, but they both went by their middle names. So Paul and Diane, which was a nightmare when working through the health system and stuff because they'd call them Margaret and Elmer, and I'm like, oh no, it's not. Anyway, digress.
Yeah.
So then, anyway, they moved from Hornby, and he picked up the his entire cattle. Like so
and they moved together. So they
they were married before then,
and they met through.
and my grandma actually moved with them because like my dad's dad passed away when he was fairly young.
Yeah.
So he had to take over the farm young.
And how did they meet?
Through junior farmers, I think. Back in the day, it's like
a lot
everyone,
of,
yeah, and everyone was a farmer back then, right? There's a lot of farmers, but I never went to junior farmers. A big 4-H guy, but never junior farmers. But so they moved up to Rockwood, and I remember my dad telling me like he milked the cows in Hornby the one morning, and then he was milking them in Rockwood that night. So can you imagine like moving your entire herd, even move some buildings, and everything, and he set up. And a funny story, not long after he moved, he was at the Saunders Bakery, when it was Saunders Bakery, and there's a lady, I was talking to him, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm a dairy farmer or whatever, local farmer." And she says, "Oh, did you hear about the farmer who just moved in recently and bought a farm for $100,000?" And he said, "Oh, that was me." So now you can't even buy a tractor for $100,000, right?
It's funny you say that because my dad has a similar story when a house in Acton sold for $100,000, and he was like. He said, we were sitting at the bar having a beer, and he's like, "Can you believe it? $100,000."
I know it was a lot of money then, and then in the 80s we bought the farm next door to us, and that was when interest rates were like 22% or so. And I remember it's not every day the farm next door comes for sale, and we hemmed and hawed, and I was just young, but he got through it. So
and was that bought like out of necessity for the herd, or
it was bought for opportunity, but also more land. Right, so it wasn't a lot of land, but and it's like a historic property. It's kind of neat. So, but now, and it's another house. Actually, when I got married, my parents moved there, but now they've passed. I've moved there, and then to get away from you, really. Yeah. And then now my parents are at the main, or my children are at the main farm. So yeah.
So with your dad, like, how was the business run back then? And he was strictly a dairy farmer.
Yeah, and back then people more dabbled in little things too. So like I think he they had like a brewer house where they sold eggs, like fertilized eggs or something like that, and farmers were a little more diversified, right? To make
pigs.
A little bit of everything. And he bought his first bicycle with a pig that he raised, and his name was Mr. Bill was the pig. So and I know nothing about pigs except from university stuff, but those stories. Actually, I was talking to another neighbor, Tyler Brander, yesterday, and we were like reminiscing how old we're getting, because we were talking about back in the day when we were young, how we were doing hay, it's like square bales, and all summer you'd be like, you wouldn't see your friends all summer, you'd get out of school and you'd just be doing hay all summer and throwing all these square bales and stuff, and now this year I got my first cut hay done in like 4 days. Yeah. But then we were talking back in our dad's day, it was like, loose hay by hand with the horses and stuff, right? So things change. But I'm a big sucker for history and keeping up with that stuff.
So with that, I mean, most people think about you're a dairy farmer and you just get out there and go and milk the cows. Like I mean, it is diverse. You guys are you're cutting hay, you're fertilizing the fields. Like you're still very much into different forms of agriculture.
For sure. So I don't know. I think like back in my dad's day, there was a little more diversification, but with the advent of markets and stuff, it made sense to go more specific into a certain product. So you do a really good job at one thing. Yeah. That being said, diversification is kind of coming back in. So you could have dairy cows, and for a small herd like ours, it's hard to make ends meet with, a couple families involved, like my kids and stuff. So, something like on-farm tourism or something like that, things that kind of go hand in hand, or on-farm processing, which what I'd love to do someday. There's no one else in the area that really does it. Like, so selling our products right directly to the consumer from the farm instead of going through, in the store. It's just a different way of doing it, right?
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, so it's like, but I'm not this is where I tout the industry. The industry is, no matter what farm you go to across Canada, we all have the same rules and regulations. So we have welfare audits, we have surprise inspections, routine inspections, we have quality standards we have to meet, or we get penalized, or shut off production. They check every tank of milk for take a sample, and they check it for antibiotics. They check it for bacteria. You're allowed a certain amount. There's always bacteria in everything. That's why things are pasteurized. They check for white blood cells, the Semitic cell count, because that's always in milk too. But if there's a higher level of it, then there could be an indication of something, when your cows aren't feeling well. Yep. And the animals are also tested individually once a month.
Yeah.
We're doing that tonight, actually. And then they also check for fat and protein, and they check for the freezing point of the milk. So if there was extra water in it for some reason, then you get penalized for that. So no matter where,
so you can't just pour water in it.
No. And you're kind of getting paid based on how much fat's in your milk, so you don't want to be diluting that down anyway.
So the fat content, we're gonna get back to that with a different kind of
I kind of got off that, but it was just good.
I had a question for you, just to digress a little bit.
Yeah.
For your dad, okay, he was, your dad would have been a third generation, you're fourth generation.
Yeah.
Can you remember your dad? Like, was there ever any point where your dad wanted to, or your mom, right? Because it's a teamwork, right? When you're on the farm,
very much.
Ever wanted to get out of the industry? Right? Like, was it ever like, because now you're regulated, you have your quotas, but you didn't always have that, right?
Yes, so that's a good question. So and I've actually posted about that before. So that kind of comes down to supply management.
Yeah.
So back in the day, before like the 70s, it was like, I remember my dad telling me that the neighbor down the road or across the road or something, his milk went to, it was in cans and stuff. It went to a processor. And then his went to another processor because that processor was full, wasn't taking anyone else. And that guy got almost twice as much value for his milk as my dad did for the same product, right? So it was very unfair. So then supply management came up. It was offered to a number of commodities, like wheat, dairy, poultry. The beef farmers were even actually offered it. The beef declined. It's just they were doing really well at the time. Yeah. And dairy took it on, and then the poultry and eggs and turkey and stuff. And it made it so much more of a fair playing field, right? So you would get paid the same as your neighbor for the same quality product. And the thing about supply management is consumers think it actually increases the cost of their milk.
Yeah.
In some cases it may.
That would be what I would think.
A lot of cases it doesn't. And if you compare the US to Canada and you take into account the dairy farmers in the US, a lot of my friends and peers do a great job as well, but they get paid supplements to the government through taxes. Whereas dairy farmers in Canada do not. So we get what we get paid for. We don't get supplemented by the government. Unless there's some issue or something, right? But so in the U.S., you're actually buying your milk at the store, but then you're paying for it again through your taxes to go to the dairy farmer. So in a lot of cases, their products are more expensive
because
or on even par.
Subsidized.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but you don't see that, and consumers don't see that. And the other thing with supply management is, if dairy farmers like myself are getting paid a fair amount of milk, or a fair amount for our milk, which they actually routinely will review. So someone will review what it costs us to produce it. So I think it's 50% of producers have to make their cost of production or something. It's some level like that. So they are always surveying producers and checking that, and they check on what consumers are able to pay, and then they base it on that. And then as a supply managed farm, we also are able to, I'm not saying that other farmers don't look after their animals, but we are paid a fair wage so that we can put a lot of money back into our farms for efficiency, technology, and welfare. Like, there's no urge to cut a corner. Not that anyone would. Yeah. But it's just when you're getting paid fair, you're going to be doing a really good job. So
do you so I guess I got a couple questions here. One, your dad was a big advocate of this, Was he?
Yes, I think all farmers were back
Like
then.
when they saw it, were they like, wow, this is a really good idea? Or were they like, government regulations?
Yeah, there's always some people like that. Even now with supply management, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. The downfall of supply management is it's hard to get into the industry. It's hard to get quota, right? So the way quota works is I have quota for a certain amount of cows that I can only produce that much milk. So it goes by kilograms of fat that you produce, really. So our cows are high fat producing animals. So we can burn through our quota a little faster.
So how would you get more quota?
So every month they have a exchange. So if some farmers selling their quota, getting out of the business, it goes on the exchange. And then it's prorated so that
is it regulated on what you can charge for that?
Yep, there's a cap in Ontario, and all provinces are different. I think out west it's like $40,000 to $50,000 per kilo. In Ontario, it's 25, I think it is, right? 1,000. But so right now I've been bidding on. We're hoping to build a new barn, right? So I'm hoping to grow a little bit because our farm is very small. But to bid for a kilo of quota, I can bid my maximum amount of quota, and you only get a small percentage, like 0.1 kilos. So takes forever to grow.
Yeah.
But there was a time where you could bid and pay what you bid. So say you had a lot of money to burn, or farmers coming over from Europe, sell their farm by the square foot. They had some money. They would bid high for the quota, and you could like double your herd size overnight if you had the money to do it, right? So this way it's fair, but it's also hard to get in. But they also have a new producer program. So you can apply to be a new producer, and they will give you a certain amount of quota to start up with a, you don't have to pay it back for a number of years.
Yeah.
So there is a way to get into it.
It's interesting too, because like you look at your dad did it. I mean, he was a dairy farmer. I mean, your dad never felt obligated to become a dairy farmer. It was in his blood. He wanted to do it.
Well, that's a good question because
the progress, like when I look at dairy farmers now, I'm like, whoa, the quota. It's like a lobster quota. Like I'm like, whoa, because your dad got in the industry at a time when you weren't making that money. So you almost like. I mean, it's turned into something that of value, but he never knew that, right? He's done it more of a passion, like.
It's in your blood. Like his dad was one, and he actually apprenticed for a plumber.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think when he's 50,
he was full of shit.
When he's 50, he got new knees. He's had really bad arthritis. He worked, never took a holiday in his life. On his honeymoon, my mom got a stiff neck, had the doctor out. They never really had a honeymoon.
Yeah.
That was about it. He worked every day his entire life, and he's a bit of a workaholic. I try to look at things a little differently. I'm a bit of a workaholic too. But even myself, when I was thinking about taking over the farm, I'd wanted to be a veterinarian. I thought, it was really kind of a geek at school. I love school. I still like learning. Ended up marrying one instead, which has been great. Also, I applied for meteorology and climatology. I love weather and geology. I took a minor in geology at university, and I like a lot of things. But ultimately, my dad needed his knees replaced at 50. I was in university, and it's like I took animal science. That's what I finally took. And he said, you got to make a decision. Are you going to farm? Because I can't do this forever, right? Yeah. You can't milk cows anymore unless you're automated, right? So,
are you currently automated?
Yeah, everyone's automated to a point. There's no milking by hand anymore, but we have like a barn where the cows are still pastured, and they come in, they have their own little stalls. It's a little bit more of a traditional farm.
Yeah.
But we're still, I think we're in the top 10% in Canada. I think we were 6th in Ontario or in the county, one or the other. We do really well on our small herd.
Okay.
But the herd size in Canada is 90 cows or plus now, and we're only like 41, 43 cows, but we're still very competitive because we try to do a really good job management, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so I decided to farm. When I went to university, took animal science. Made some changes to the farm. Production went up. Our barn is getting old.
Did you have was there a point there where you're like I look at myself and my dad's mother sold real estate at one point in time.
We're kind of similar that way, yeah.
And I, when I was growing up, I wanted nothing to do with real estate. Did you ever have that sentiment?
Yeah, I did. I actually did. It's like, especially, no offense to my dad, but being the workaholic, and he's very needed things done to perfection all the time, right? He never could do a perfect job. He's a great man, awesome person. He'd give you the shirt off his back, and very kind, gentle person, but he also expected perfection.
Yeah.
And he was milk quality awards. He'd always get 100% milk quality awards, and he'd stress about it. And I find myself doing a little bit like that, but not quite to the extent.
And it's more of a generational thing too, where homebody versus you have that outlook where I still want to do what he did and carry the legacy on,
Exactly.
but then I've got to do my own. I got to have my own legacy.
That's right. And so when that gets into technology, so a lot of robotics on farms now, which my son Andy wants to take over the farm. I don't want him to have, the homebody stuck on the farm, which isn't a bad life. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
But, and I don't need a cottage to go to because I have 250 acres I can roam around on and do whatever I want, but it is nice to get away.
Yeah.
And with my family, I think I've only been away maybe twice with my kids. It's hard. They're old enough now to look after things, but one of us has to be home.
Yeah, you're not going on an all-inclusive with the whole family. Yeah.
I just wrote a blog actually for a agricultural mental health association on that exact thing.
Yeah.
It's just that's the stress of having a small farm. If you're a bigger farm and you have full-time help, it's different.
Yeah.
But
I've got that. We're going to get to that.
Okay. Getting ahead of you.
So then for yourself, you thought, okay, maybe a veterinary medicine, and then you started, your dad's knees weren't cooperating, and then you started making some subtle changes to the farm.
That's right. And actually, I forgot in there, I applied for teachers college as well, because a lot of teachers in my family.
That kind of stops the stigma too. Like when we had Sarah Parkinson in here, and
Sarah's great,
and it the stigma of a farmer, right? This hick farmer and their coveralls, and I mean, I'm shocked at the education that goes through it, and the generational is more like your dad. A lot of that is trial and error, and
sure,
and then he had the ability to, did he go to university?
No.
All right.
No.
And then he had the ability to put you through school and
Yep.
and all that. And the same as Paul and Sarah and the girls. I just think that the education there in relation to that industry is freaking phenomenal. And the technology is unreal.
There's actually 8 jobs for every graduate from the University of Guelph for agriculture right now. And the technology, you're right, everything from the crop stuff to I'm still catching up, like drones and the robotics and even like the cow monitoring, like the rumination monitors, like they'll I'm getting off topic again, but they have like collars on the cows. You'll see them. Ours don't have them.
They can talk, right? Is that?
Well, they can when they chew their cud.
Yeah.
So a cow has 4 parts of their stomach: rumen, reticulum, omasum, and abomasum.
Okay.
And what they do is they're a prey animal. So they'll eat their feed really fast, and then they'll go somewhere safe and lay down and eat it, right? That's what they would do if there was wild cows, right? So what they do is they eat that food, they bring it back up it's called a bolus, or their cud, and they'll chew it again. It makes saliva, helps buffer their stomach, so it brings down the pH and stuff. But the rumination monitor will monitor how often they ruminate and chew their cud, and it will be an early detection on if they have health issues or if they're coming into estrus, into heat, for ready to get bred. They also have things that will go into their stomach and stay there that will monitor the pH and stuff like that. And it's pretty mind blowing what they can do.
Yeah. So for you, you started farming full time. You took over essentially from your dad.
Yep.
Now the transition. So your dad was always still around, right?
Yep.
like I do find like when the torch is passed, there's always a point where you're like you're asking dad for everything, and then all of a sudden everybody's asking you for everything.
That's exactly it.
Right?
And I think about those things, and you know, even like, you know, my dad passed away last year, but even when I was planting corn this spring, like he always liked to make sure we have a GPS, but I don't use it for planting, but I use it for other things on the cropping. But I was trying to plant my corn really straight because he would always have the most perfect rows of corn, and I could never get them straight enough for him. And even when I was planting the spring, I was thinking about him, and I was wondering if he's looking down thinking, am I planting that corn straight enough?
Yeah.
Right. But it's nice to have someone to, even if you know the answer, to go to and get that second reinsurance or opinion, right? You're like, yeah, and then you feel like you're not going it alone. Or if you make a wrong decision, at least you had someone kind of back you up. And he's not the kind of person to say, well, I told you so, you shouldn't have done that. He's like, you know, supportive. But yeah, it's scary. And in farming, it was like, it's such a family business, and you're so tied together, and you know, it's like working with family. It doesn't always go perfectly, and you have tiffs and stuff, and my son and I do too. We have different ways of thinking, but it's like at the end of the day, you know, you do support each other, and you get through it. But yeah, it's pretty unique, but not unique, but it is unique in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It is. It really is. I think you know, with that, like the understanding that, like, you know, my way or the highway, you know, which I'm sure you probably ran into that with your dad.
So especially him not going to university, right? Like he was in high school, but when his dad died young, so he did take over the farm young. Yeah. But after going to university, studying animal science, specifically, you know, how to take care of animals and the science behind it, coming home as, you know, a smart aleck son, you know, like, this is what we should be doing. This is what we should be doing. He's already doing a lot of that because we work with the University of Guelph. We've done a lot of research on our farm. The vets come out every 2 weeks with students and do a lot of teaching. So we're always kind of like on the cusp of things that were new and learning things that were new or finding out what's coming up, right? So he was always kind of ahead of his time that way. We actually did a project on methane production in cows before it was a big thing. So we had the university come and put the cows in these big hoods, and they would breathe in these hoods and stuff. They have better ways of doing it now, and changing their diet to see how much methane they produce. And but now it's come up to, we can actually breed cows to bulls that will produce offspring that produce less methane.
That's craziness.
Yeah.
Well, like, and even with the old school guys, like for your dad, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they would have done most of the things. It's just maybe the explanation of why it was being done wouldn't be there. And
That's true. That's true.
Like, so they're doing it, and then they're like even for my dad, like, we'd say something, he's like, yeah, well, we're doing that anyways, but you didn't really know, like, you were doing it, you just didn't know, like, I guess the science behind it.
That's right. Or, well, yeah, that's true. And there's always a little bit of, if you don't get out there and see what other people do, there's always, like, we've always done it that way. Yeah. You know, like, why change? It's not broken. But, like, say feeding calves extra milk, you know, they're finding now that, you know, pairing them up into groups when they're younger, they do when they're older, but actually makes them grow faster, and they have better intakes, and giving them a certain amount more milk more times a day will actually increase growth, but actually not only that, but it'll increase production down the road. Yeah. Like, all these little things are research, but so there's always little tweaks, and I'm always learning, and that's the kind of industry where it is, like you said, technology is just in leaps and bounds, and I can't keep up with it hardly. So, and
I think farmers too, like I get the impression that they're problem solvers. Like, there's always gonna be something going on. There's gonna be you know, a tractor going, like, you know, and I talked about it with Paul, you know, like, I had the, you know, the dually wheel ripped right off the Versatile. Yeah. And it wasn't, and, you know, I pick up the phone and I'm almost like, did I do, you know, but it was like, okay, you know, go here, go like, and it's just like, that's everyday life. So it's like, if I'm going to get, like, so I do find farmers are a little more lax at that in terms of, like, you're going to get pissed off, or you're just going to fix it and move on and the day goes. Right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think a lot of farmers are that way. Like there is some truth to, the baler twine and duct tape thing, right? You do what you do to get through.
Yeah.
But we do have a pretty good, I don't know, like everything from the veterinarian to the accountant to the feed salesman or dealership to, the mechanics. It's a pretty good team of people. They understand when you're broken down, you need help. But farmers are pretty good at, on the most part, thinking outside the box and getting through.
And they do have a hell of a community, right? Like
they
talked about branders.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like if
awesome
you need
neighbors.
something, right, he's going to be there and vice versa.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So
I actually have a neighbor down the road, Kenneth Strander, as well. He just got out of dairy, but we share a lot of equipment together.
Yeah.
And for a small farm, like
he comes
that's
over and
huge.
does your snow.
Yeah.
Right?
Just
I tried to get him to do mine, but I just don't have the same connection.
Oh yeah, I think he's done it a couple times.
He has.
He would. He's the kind of person who would do it for whatever, right? But he, we share some equipment, and even though he's out of dairy farming, like he still comes and helps us with haying and stuff, right? Just because
it's that thing. It's like repetition. You do it for so damn long that like your dad, like you talked about a lifestyle. I mean, I don't think you like that's the definition of a lifestyle, right? And like, do you think you find a lot of people in your industry, maybe the sons or whatever, that almost have a little resentment, like it's not for them? They get into it and then they're like, crabby. You do get the crabby farmer every so often.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Like,
I think like you do get caught into it. Maybe you never had the opportunity to do something else, which I think is important. Like I never really did. Like I went to university and stuff, but you need to get off the farm if you can, find out what life is like outside it, what working for someone else is like. Yeah. And then come back. But there are some farm kids that they're treated worse than a hired help, right? Yeah. And
why do you think that is?
Why is that? I think it's because that's a good question. I think farmers, especially dairy farmers or livestock farmers, it is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is a lot of responsibility. Yeah. And the farmer, like my dad, for instance, he expected me, he had a saying, he'd say, big boy at night, big boy in the morning. So if I went out at night, had fun with my friends, he expected me out to work, right? Yeah. They've worked so hard, and my parents especially. Like my dad built sheds. He dug post holes. He did so many things physically. Like I remember him being on the barn taking out the nails and screwing in screws by hand, like thousands of them, right? Like just worked so hard on what he had, clearing trees and picking rocks, and he's put so much of his heart and soul into it that he wants that to be carried on and respected, and he wants you to do your part to respect what he's done. But I don't know, I just think farm kids, they have a good work ethic. A lot of them are very well balanced. The education and outgoing, like 4-H and stuff, has done a lot for me and other people. But the older generation, I'm kind of in between. I can see it, but
because you're getting old.
I'm getting old, man. We're getting old, man. But it's like I try not to. My son, like he was away in BC earlier this spring. It was during planting time. I'm like, I really don't want him to go, but I know it's important, Yes. And he's playing like ultimate frisbee, and my daughter too. And they're doing tournaments on weekends and stuff. Something I would no way my dad would ever let me do. And I never got away either until later in life, and I had to wait till my kids were old enough pretty much, to look after things. But hoping with new technology, a new barn, we have a little more flexibility as a family.
Did you ever envy some of the kids that didn't have that responsibility?
Yep. When I was younger, for sure. But as I grew older, I realized I learned to appreciate it. I'm like, thank goodness I grew up the way I did.
It is funny because I grew up in town, and I always like my wife drives me crazy because I'm like, I want a farm. I want 50 acres. I want 100 acres. She's like, why? I'm like, I just want, I want to walk my dog on my own property. Like,
you're close enough now.
Yeah, I've got different reasons, but like it's kind of like if you're, it's you always want what you don't have, right? So there is that aspect of it too.
And if you don't know any different, right?
Yes.
So when I finished pub school, like that was it. Bye, friends. You know, and then I was at the farm and I never left it, like doing hay, cropping, whatever, all summer long. And I kind of missed the school, but then I didn't really want to go back into school.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I'd see my friends and they were like, things never changed because they would be connected all summer, you know, doing stuff, soccer and playing and hanging out. Whereas I'd work and it would be like trying to get to know them again.
Yeah.
Right. So, and there was no technology to text back then and you know, drive.
you didn't know
I didn't have a driver's license. So it's like you're just kind of in your own little world. But thinking back, it is the best childhood and growing up you could ever have.
Like, and you got to admit too, like, you know, like we talk about farms, right? And you can associate farms with labor, right? Like hay and all this stuff. But like the beauty of the farm in itself, like
it's
when
true.
you look at, like when I sell, like you know, country real estate is something that we sell in town stuff all the time. A lot of it's cookie cutter, but the farms or the acreages, everyone is different. Okay. And when I look at, you know, some people want all trees, and some farmers want all open arable land, and some people want a pond. And when I look at your place, right, you do have a lot. You've got mixed bush, you've got open fields.
You're a real estate person, aren't you?
Well, you've got the pond, right?
Fence lines, you got everything.
You know, but the other thing is that, and my little guy Bennett, like with Andy can spot an indigenous arrowhead from sitting in a tractor. Like that's the cool thing too, because it's the history. And then when you know, when the chores are done and you sit back and you sit on your porch, you know, there's a gratitude there.
You know,
for
exactly.
right?
I think you must be a farmer back in your past life.
Maybe,
because that's how you feel. Like it is. You know, you rush around, get your crops planted, and then it has rain or something. You're watching it grow, and you're like, "Yeah, I did that." Or you get that hay off before the rain, and it's like, "I did that." You know, or you're watching your herd genetics. You know, you're getting a cow that's like, you know, wow, she's a beauty queen. You know, it's like people want to see her and stuff, and it's so much pride in it.
Yeah.
And like I can trace every one of my cows back to like as far as I can go to like great grandfather, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
And we've never really bought anything in. We're closed herd, but those cows have just grown in you know, genetics and it's just amazing. It makes me so proud.
And the history, right? Like,
and the history.
Like you've got your history. And one thing too I always like is that with the farmers, they always continue history from a previous owner. There's like usually something that's like, you know, Old Man River's pond, or like, you know, somebody's house, or like, you know, like I once again I go back to Paul's, but it was like, you know, he would talk about like, you know, here's Verhagen's or here's Milson's. He'd own these places, but they weren't his. They were the previous owner's
That's right.
farm.
That's how you know it's like the old Tate place, which is down the road, but it's not owned by them anymore, right? It's like, and like even where you live was the previous owner of our farm. Like Art Benham lived there, right? And I have, when he moved from our 1885 farmhouse to there, he took some of the artifacts with him, which I ended up getting back. Yeah. But it's just like,
that's where those went.
The gold nuggets. And stuff. Yeah, I know. But it's just, the remnants of, so the basement of that farmhouse has the history of Art Benham and the people that were before him. They never got really, and my parents and me now. Yeah. It's like, it's a nice tidy house except for the basement. It's like, it goes back to where there was actually a chest I found in there that came over from Europe. From whoever moved there first. Yeah. Which is, my parents didn't know it was there. It was like buried in the back of this wall. And it was like cool. So I'm a huge history guy. And
too, with the indigenous stuff, it's like when I was, like when you and I were talking, like you're still learning stuff from the land. Like you're like, geez, I think there was a riverbed there and they had camps here. And you guys are like, you know what I mean? And like, I just, like, you know, you get a lot of enjoyment from that land, which I think is obviously part of the process. True. Like you are, when you say a steward of the land, it's a true thing.
And like that's kind of goes back to like, you know, I didn't always want to be a farmer necessarily. Yeah. It was in my blood, but it's like I want to be a teacher because I like teaching. But now through social media and stuff, I can do that still. I wanted to be, you know, a meteorologist, like the weather, because I work with it every day. It's my life. It controls what I do and don't do, right? And it makes me happy. It makes me sad. So I think that's why I got attracted to that. I took a minor in geology because I love, picking rocks and the, the drumlins and moraines and how the glaciers form the land and what's under the ground. Like there's actually platinum deposits on our other farm, which that's cool. I love that kind of stuff, right? So, and environmental, I want to do environmental studies as well, but because I want to take care of the land to make it even better for the next generation, right?
So on that, let's talk about education. So, I've got two parts because I want to talk about the mental health aspect, but I also want to talk about the education to the general public.
Sure.
You talk about social media advocate, speaker, and teaching kind of comes up, like promoting agriculture, and mental health has come up a few times here. Mm-hmm. So like you'd mentioned, and I couldn't help but thinking about it when you're talking about some farm kids are treated worse than the hired help. Talk about that. Talk about mental health. Like
mental health. So, yeah. So when I got into social media, I'll go back to that first. I grew up without social media and everything, but so my wife Kirsten, she got Facebook back when it came out. And I resisted. Like, what a waste of time, right? She even convinced me to get a cell phone way back in the day because she wanted to know where in the back 40 I was, right? Yeah. So finally, I got onto it, and then I was looking at it. I'm like,
this is the wife that you wooed with a calving experience.
A calving experience, yeah. Our first date was like a calving experience, calving. And yeah, anyway.
Because most women would be out of there.
Yeah, she's pretty good. She's more into the small animal stuff now, but she doesn't mind the hands-on to the large animal. She's done mixed animal stuff. So
that's awesome.
So anyway, I started looking at my social media, and I think that's why a lot of farmers get into advocacy advocating for agriculture, because misinformation, right? Because like less than 2% of the population are farmers, and even less than that are dairy farmers, and we're trying to battle that information 98% of the people are either putting out there or seeing, right? So we need to either get to them before they see that misinformation, or try to educate them so they have the skills to know what they're seeing. But anyway, I digress. But so that's why I kind of got into social media, to try to battle that misinformation. But I also find that battling misinformation, what's the word I'm trying to find? Anyway, it doesn't always work because people have their own mindset, right?
Sure. So
I started to, instead of like myth busting, that's right. Myth busting sometimes works, sometimes it backfires, and science tells you it can backfire. And I started doing that, and it's popular, and a lot of farmers like, yay, whatever. But my target has always been non-farming consumers, like the urban populations. And I've never went away from that. A lot of farmers get on social media, but they kind of delve back into the agricultural groups, right? Because they kind of stick together. But I've always tried to talk to consumers, and I talk to them in a way that they respect, and I can understand why people are activists. I can understand, that,
which is different because it is a pretty closed community, right?
Yeah.
Like, like it's not like you talk about, I mean, you wouldn't come to me and talk about dairy farms and issues and all that stuff. I mean, historically, the community was pretty closed-lipped, right?
Exactly. And that's why I think all farmers should get their voice out there, because we need, we have organizations like Dairy Farmers of Ontario. Yeah. But people look at them as an organization. They don't look at them as an individual farmer with a family. And that's why I try to talk to people about me. Like, what kind of person am I? Like, what are my, what do I bring to the farm? Like, how do I care for my animals? How do I feel about the weather that day? Like, they want to know your emotion and everything, but they also care about technology and stuff, but they also want more or less know about the person behind what the food's being produced, right? So that really, really works. But and
it is neat just to touch on that, where like it's like an egg stand where the people who are supplying the eggs, and I think that's really important. And even you'd mentioned the milk, like it's almost like that farm to table.
Exactly. And that's why it's so popular, and people love that connection of going to the farm, seeing where the milk's produced. And if I ever did that, I'd have a hard time marketing, because I really do believe that no matter where you go in Canada, you're going to get the same quality, the same welfare, like the same. But people on my social media, they see me talk about my animals, my farm, and how I'm feeling, and my family, and they say, where I want to buy your milk, because I know you, and I know what you do, and I know you care, right? But I'm like, the majority of farmers, you're always going to have bad apples, but majority of people do an amazing job, and they love what they do, and I went into agriculture. This goes back to education stuff. Decided to get into farming because I enjoy working with animals. I enjoy, working with crops. I enjoy the challenges. It has its negatives, right? You can't get away. Working around the weather, stresses. Talking about mental health. We'll get back into that again. But so anyway, my target was always non-urban consumers. But when you're been into social media as long as I have, you get a lot of farmers follow you as well, and people would reach out. And it would be after a devastating barn fire. Because you imagine, like, one day you go out, your barn's on fire. If you happen to get your animals out safe, then your building's gone, winter's coming, your feed's gone. Like, like to start again, like I can't imagine that's stressful, right? Or a tornado or anything like that. Weather. So like, right now, the spring was challenging with the wet and the cold, and the corn was turning yellow. I'm like, is it gonna die? And then it could be a drought just as soon as that happens, and I'm gonna feed for the winter, or hailstorm. When a storm comes up, people are like, oh, I love a good storm, but I'm like, oh Jesus, is it gonna blow the roof off the barn? Are my animals gonna be safe? Is it gonna destroy my corn?
And that's one thing for everybody out there looking. Okay, farmers always complain about the weather.
Yep,
okay, even
always
it's too sunny, it's too wet. All right.
Today is humid for my cows. They're like, they don't like to be out in the humidity.
Sorry, go ahead. Go on.
And it affects everything, your bottom line, right? And
so when did you think you were like? I mean, you didn't like to have a 160,000 followers on Facebook is a lot. Okay,
yeah.
And I mean, to me, I had no clue, right? Now. Like, when did you, like, you started something that was just, and look at your account. You started something that was kind of just like, here, this is what I'm going to do. But in terms of the ambition, like, you're a dairy farmer by trade. It's not like you're an influencer by trade. And now, like, so when did that all kind of like snowball, and you're like, holy shit, this is like, look at this, or look at
well,
this.
It's kind of like social media has changed, and I've changed with it. I purposely, so Facebook and
like shirtless tractor pics, like
yeah, that's right, yeah. What was I going to say? I've always resisted wanting to get paid for my social media, right? So Facebook's always saying, hey, you could have made $1,000 on this video or whatever, right? But that's not my intent. And I've had this conversation with my family many times. It's the temptation's there. All you have to do is put in your driver's license and your tax information, and which I don't really want to do to Meta anyway. But a lot of people get into social media for the money, or they're going to sell swag and stuff. And I've thought about doing it for like charities, like mental health stuff, right? But that takes a lot of work, and I've always resisted the money thing, which is maybe stupid, but I think it also gives me credibility. Like that I'm not doing it for any other reason than just to put myself out there.
Yeah. And
there has been times where I want to quit. So you don't want to ever think of it as a job. Like, I've slowed down now a lot, just partly because of my personal stuff, my parents passing away and stuff, right? But there's a couple times I've been attacked on social media by activists who don't know me from a hole in the wall.
So what does that look like?
So one particular time there was an animal rights convention in Toronto coming up, Animal Liberation Group, I think it was. And a few days before that, Dairy Farmers Ontario send us emails with activist updates, which has been pretty good since COVID.
Yeah.
And I respect everyone's food choices, and I've had vegans actually say, hey, I've added dairy in my diet because of what you've posted. I realize you're not a bad person, like everyone made me out to be, and I don't care about people's food choices. That's not why I'm in it. But So anyway, they'll send you these notifications, and one was a particular. It was going to be a farm visit. They were just going to drop into a farm about. That was going to be within an hour of Toronto, and it kind of fit that description. No one said where, so they sent this notice saying just keep an eye out for things. So that a couple of days before that, someone was taking pictures of my farm sign and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of weird. So I let them know. And so they actually sent armed guards to the end of my lane that day. And I was so stressed. I'm like, I'm just a little farmer with a family. Why am I putting myself out there? I'd be quiet and stay in the farm and not say anything. And kind of counterintuitive what I've been telling everyone to do, to tell you a story, right? Nothing happened to us that day, but there was a small Mennonite farm in Elmira that they dropped in on their farm. The gentleman wasn't on social media. His wife was pregnant. He had a couple kids, and a whole group of them marched down this laneway, and they said, "We want in your barn." And he says, "No, I don't think you should."
They want a what
in his barn?
Okay,
right. So he says no, and they pushed him to the side. He actually went out to the field and started praying for them to go away. He didn't know what to do, and they occupied his barn for an hour or so, like taking videos, making things appear that they weren't. I think they actually took one of his animals, his calves, with them, and
does anything happen?
It's terrifying. Well, there's more trespassing. There's trespassing laws have come up, partly because of those things.
So that's theft, right? I think they'd be pretty lucky, because there'd be some people like one thing I know about farms is, there's dogs and firearms and
there's cameras and stuff, but they picked on a Mennonite. They're maybe not as technologically advanced. He didn't have social media. He didn't get emails with stuff, right? But and so I got I go back to that. I got a message from a gentleman from the UK, from the Animal Liberation Front. A scary man. Like, it was a picture of him with 2 automatic rifles like this, and I have no messenger on my social media now because of that. Because you go on there and they see you read it. So he says, "Oh, I saw you read my message." He said, "Why do you get your jollies out of abusing animals?" That's what he said. And I'm like,
"Why do you
I could get your jollies out of abusing animals."
Oh, yeah.
He didn't know me. He just saw a profile during farm, right? And so I ignored him. And then he took that as like, well, I'm going to share your profile. I had a post about myself. He shared it to his animal rights friends. It got shared by the Light Movement, which is a big animal rights group, who don't know me from a hole in the wall. Think I'm a horrible person, right?
Yeah.
And I've even defended vegans and activists, right? And they've come to my age. It's like there's some great people out there. But anyway, so it went all around the world, and I just got so much hate. I ended up taking that post down. I've had to put little words in my social media that block, like filters, to block out certain words like murder and kill, and they wanted to do bad things to my family and myself, and they said my best contribution to the industry would be my funeral. So I'm like, horrible.
It's creative.
And one guy actually, this was on a mental health post. I had a farmer who committed suicide. He had mental health issues, and he was a dairy farmer. He loved kids. Halloween, he set up a Halloween display because he loved making the kids happy. And the next day, he walked down the back lane and he took his life. And I did a little tribute to him. And I had a gentleman comment, and most people, "I'm sorry for your loss." He said, abusing animals must be so hard on the psyche. That's probably why he took his life. And the guy's profile photo said, "Choose kindness." And I'm like that's just sick, really, right? But to go back, I'd say 99.99999% are supportive, positive, good people. Like, even people who disagree are great. So the activists are just a small part of the vocal minority, just like farmers. We're a small part of a minority, right?
Yeah, and I think the education, I think, even I remember a story. I can't remember the type of cow, but the hind legs were really thin and real bony.
Yeah.
And you'd have people phoning and phoning, SPCA because there's a malnourished or that hasn't been fed, but that's just the
characteristics. That's right. So beef cattle, like you've seen our Belted Galloways out there, they're just round, beefy balls of right?
Yeah.
This chubbiness.
Those are the police car cows, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And then the dairy cows are actually bred to be, well, not bony, but it's called dairy character, right?
Yeah.
So I'll look at a cow saying that she's really overweight. This is going to be a health concern. But someone else will look at her and thinking like she's emaciated.
Yes.
But it takes, and I can see why people think that, right? But it's not. It's hard. Like I'll post a picture of a cow and they'll say, oh, she looks thin. I'm like, actually, my vet tells me she's actually overweight. I need to watch and get some weight off her, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on what stage of lactation they're in, right? So they're like the workhorse of the bovine industry. So beef cows are meant to just kind of laze around and get chubby.
Yeah.
And where dairy cows are a fine-tuned animal that gets fed a very balanced diet to meet the nutritional needs of themselves, their calf, and the consumer, right? Because they produce way more milk than they need themselves.
So for the like I mean, it's not like you're in the beef industry and you're having your slaughter the cows every season or anything like that, right? I mean, I'm a big beef eater, so
yeah.
It's not about that. But I guess just in terms of dairy,
yeah.
What's the big objection that they're continually their bodies are continually thinking they're pregnant, producing milk, or
no? So they actually have to,
or that they've.
So a cow actually has to have a calf to produce milk, right?
Okay.
And we usually have one a year. So think about wild deer or moose or something. I don't know a lot about them, but they'll get pregnant by a bull and then they'll have a baby or whatever, a young one.
Yeah.
And just like a cow, they'll have a calf every year, have a young one. So it's not like it's unnatural, right? And we actually we'll choose bulls that will improve the animal's health and benefits and the calf's benefits.
Yeah.
And next generation, make sure that they're healthy, they're the right size, they're the right age. In the wild, it's like I think the stat is for deer, 75% of them actually don't survive. Okay. Whereas our mortality is like 0. Everyone survives pretty much, right? So I think some of that's misinformation. So a cow will have a calf, produce milk. They'll naturally get up to a peak about 90 days, and then they'll taper off. And then generally they have about 2 months of a dry period when they're on holidays. So the farmer doesn't get a holiday, but the cows, if you're looking out, going by our place and you're looking out in the front field next to the shed, those are all cows on holidays.
Yeah.
2 months holiday. So just to rejuvenate and it's pretty nice.
Now, would there be dairy farmers that don't have the holiday?
The cows?
Yeah.
No, they need it. They need
Okay.
it. So science has shown us that 60 days generally is probably what they need. Any more or less, there's a little bit of flexibility that can cause issues. So their balanced nutrition for, like we have a nutritionist actually balances their ration, the cows, for different stages of lactation. So
and then too, like one thing, you can tell their attitudes, right? Like you can see, in their face or their mannerisms if they're happy or not.
Yep.
Right.
And that's.
I mean, someone might have a different opinion on it, but like that's one thing that I've noticed, and I always look back to like, I've got a friend of mine, and he's a driver. He's in the harness racing industry, and we were at Mohawk over here, and he was taking the kids to the barn, and he said, you can see the horses, they want to race. Like they get excited to race. Their ears get up, and then they get excited, and when they win, the strut that they have when they win, they can feel that, right?
Oh, really? That's cool.
And it was interesting because he was pointing it out, and when we could see it, and consequently too, when I talked to Bill O'Donnell, who was in the Standardbred Hall of Fame, and he was a hell of a driver back in the day, but his biggest thing was whipping the horses, and he said that one of his biggest regrets was, I wish we wouldn't have whipped the horses as much. And he said they don't do it now, and there's studies that show that it's actually counterproductive in a race, right? Because they think, well, why are you hitting me? I'm running my ass off. And I guess just to go back, long-winded, but that kind of goes to show you the evolution of some of these industries, which is what's happening with you as well, and things are constantly changing that way too.
Things are changing. We're learning. We've learned what should and shouldn't be done. I will bring up, this is very controversial, and I don't talk about it often, but it's calf-cow separation.
Okay.
So when a cow is a calf, generally it's taken. Cows have been bred to be, they're not very maternal. Some of them are, like dairy cows. Beef cows are very maternal. You try to take their calf away, they'll try to kill you, right?
Really?
Just because they're just like that, and they stay
Yeah.
with the cow, right? And they only produce enough milk for the calf. Whereas dairy cows produce way more milk than their calf needs, right? So that's why they both can have some. But it's been done because of mortality, right? So that mortality rates are much higher when they're left with the cow. There's disease issues. There's the calf can cause mastitis, like infection to the cow. They can get stepped on. There's diseases that can be passed from the cow to the calf. There's all kinds of things that we try to prevent by doing that. And you can also monitor. The calf still gets milk from the cow, but you can monitor exactly, make sure they're getting enough.
Yeah.
Or if they're getting on to feed or all these other health things, it's to the benefit of the calf, and it's a lot more work for us. So it's not like we're doing it just to be mean, right? But there has been a lot of research, and as a dairy farmer, that's always like, as an advocate, I've always understood why consumers sometimes don't always see that or get upset by it, right? And I totally see it. I'm very much an empath too. I have that emotional connection to animals and people. But there's research now out of BC, and I think there's a couple farms in Ontario trying to keep the calves with the cows longer, to see if there can cut down mortality, if there's any benefits. So we're kind of undoing what the industry has been doing, which I think is not a bad thing. It's you don't want to undo all the health things, because we're going to get back into trouble. But maybe under certain circumstances it'll work. But eventually an animal's going to get weaned.
Yeah.
Right. And a cow eventually will kick its calf away and say, "Stop nursing me. It's hurting me. Leave me alone."
Yeah.
And that weaning, it can be a very stressful time. Right. So you either wean them when they're young, really young, or wean them when they're older. So I think there's still going to be stress there. So I'm getting a little more technical now,
Yeah,
but
no.
But it's interesting because we do listen to consumers. Like, consumers we started a pro-action program. So it's being proactive because we want to prove to consumers that we're doing what we say we do.
Yeah.
We say that we have quality milk. We say we don't have antibiotics. We say that we look after animals. So we have welfare audits. We say that, whatever, environmental farm plans, all these things that they ask for, and they want to know what we're doing. We're doing them, but we need to prove to it, right? So we do listen to them. Some things we do, I think, is the paperwork pushes farmer. I have a friend who actually got out of farming because of the paperwork and the red tape and the government stuff, which isn't a bad thing, but a lot of farmers back off on it because, like, who's asking for this? Like, is it making a difference? So when you see that little blue cow label on your produce, like your cheese or your yogurt or your milk or whatever, that is to represent the pro-action in all these things that we do behind the scenes. But farmers get frustrated because it's not connected directly to the consumer, right? Like, consumers don't see that and think, "Oh, wow, this means that the farmers are doing this." Some are getting it, but some don't care. But some, it's frustrating for us to do all this paperwork and red tape and stress and not getting reflected in our product.
Yeah, or in the media, right?
Yeah. I think it's working, because, like, if you go to those Made in Canada groups and stuff, I see someone promoting Canadian dairy, and they're like, "Yeah, we need to get ours, because we do all these things." And it's not that farmers in other countries do a bad job. Like, I'm not going to trash them, but
they're just not as good as Canadians.
I'm not going to say that, but it's like, but we do have some of the best quality milk in the world from the best cared for animals, right? And it's across the board. So it's everywhere you go. It's like different states, different rules. It's like across the board.
It's the same. Do you ever, like, so I mean, the education portion is I mean, you'll help out other farmers, but the education portion is simply just for members of the public that either they don't know or naive or whatever the case may be, that they've heard something negative about your industry and you're here to educate.
Yeah. And and a lot of it, a lot of those questions I answer behind the scenes. I can't get to them anymore. Can you imagine? Like, I have many followers. There's only one of me. It's like, it's hard, right?
And how many times, like I mean, you turned off your messenger, but, like, have there ever been a time where you're, like, really scared? from stuff like that? Because like social media is great, but that can also cause mental health issues and all sorts of stuff
Exactly.
too, right?
Oh, and it has. And I always tell people when I do presentations, if you need to step away from it, like take a break, shut it down. And actually you can close your page and put it back up. I've never had the courage to do it, but take a break. If it feels like a job, if you're burnt out, like it's not healthy.
Yeah.
And it's not my job. So I think another reason I purposely don't get paid for it, because they're saying, oh, there's $1,000 here or whatever, you should do this, or you're a rising contributor now, you need to post more, and they like this. But if I don't get paid, I don't have that pressure of trying to make money on it, right?
Yeah.
So I can take a break and bring it back up. And but no, I've kind of moved away from those really hard topics that you almost have to sit down like you and I and talk to someone about it, not broadly post it, because people only read a little bit of it, or they take what they want from it. So I'm more into, I've gotten more into the human side of agriculture. I will post things that happen on the farm and technology and stuff, but a lot of it is the human side, right? Yeah. And the animal side, but and I think that that goes back to mental health too, right? So the mental health thing came about. Actually, I had a friend way back when, and she took her life, and she was a big part of the agricultural industry.
Was she a dairy farmer?
She had dairy roots. Beautiful person, the kind of person you walk in the room and she just makes you feel good, right? Kind of like you,
like me, yeah.
Yeah. She's better looking now.
Yeah, of course.
And she took her life, and everyone was like shocked, right? And no one knew she was struggling. So, kind of out of that, people started talking about it. I have a friend, Leslie Kelly. She goes by High Heels and Canola Fields in Western Canada.
High Heels, No Fields?
High Heels and Canola Fields. She's a big cash cropper out there. Check her out. She's a super nice person.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so she's Canadian. She does a great job for mental health. So her and her husband were very vocal. They went on the CBC and they told their story about their mental health struggles, anxiety and farming and
isolation,
that kind of stuff, big farm and everything. And I love her. She's just an honest, good person. But so they went on very vocal. It kind of got picked up by the agriculture community, mental health. The Do More Agricultural Association was formed. That was the first of its kind, specifically for mental health for Canadian farmers. And since then, I was involved with a roundtable discussions with the government, Ernie Hardeman, back in the time in Ontario.
Say that again. The what?
Roundtable discussions about mental health.
Okay, yeah.
Ernie Hardeman, back then the agricultural representative from Ontario. We talked about forming what we needed to help with mental health in farmers in Ontario, because the suicide rate is twice the regular population. In
farmers?
Yes. So it's the same as in the veterinary industry. So my wife's a vet, so they have their own mental health thing.
Really?
Dr. Andrea Jones-Bitton, who's someone you should have in at the University of Guelph.
Okay.
Amazing person as well. She's a veterinarian, but she studies mental health in farmers and veterinarians. And she's been integral at getting a lot of stuff going. So the government of Ontario has started I can't get the exact name of it. It's a mental health hotline that any farmer can call any time of day.
Yeah.
And we decided as a group that the best thing to have is farmers have that stigma that they don't want to talk to people.
Yeah.
They got to tough it up, cowboy up kind of thing, right?
Well, like I keep thinking about your dad and like.
Oh yeah, he was like that.
You know, like even that generation, because they would never talk about it.
I remember one day betting a pen of straw with him, and we were like shaking up flakes of straw, and we had a guy helping us at the time, and he accidentally stabbed my dad in the leg with this pitchfork.
Yeah.
And he pulled it out, and my dad's like, oh, and he's like, I gotta go. He was like, I gotta get going, got something tough to do today. And I looked down at his boot, and there's blood filled his rubber boot, and it was coming out the top of his boot. And I'm like, Dad, do you need to go to the hospital? It'll stop bleeding. I'm like, then he started getting woozy, and I'm like that's the definition of stubborn, right?
Yeah.
And finally I got him to the hospital, and they stopped it, and it was like, anyway. But farmers want to talk to other farmers about mental health issues. So this hotline is people trained in agriculture, right? So, you say, hey, my cows have I lost a couple cows this week, or my cornfield got devastated by hail. I don't know what I'm going to do, or my wife left me and I'm all alone on the farm. How am I going to afford to keep going, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or just being alone, like it's someone to talk to. So it's huge.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of unique stressors in agriculture. Everyone has mental health stuff, but agriculture has a lot of unique stressors. Isolation. You're at the kind of at the bottom of the food chain. Like you're so grassroots that you kind of have to take what you're given for like the crop prices.
Yeah.
Like one year, like I'm not a cash cropper per se. We have a little bit, but like Parkinson's or whatever. Like one year you have a really good year, and the next year, wow, I can hardly make any money, right? Or you have a drought, or you have like a hailstorm, or you have too much rain, right? Weather is a big thing. Isolation. Financial, red tape, natural disasters, and public perception. So when you
and like families, like even like for families, like we're out in the country, we're not on a farm, obviously, but Lauren, we talk about that all the time. We're like, sometimes we're like, geez, maybe when we be in town, because then you got your neighbor, or the kids can ride their bikes. Like that's why the family unit is pretty important that way too. But it is like, just even living out in the country, you're isolated as well, just from
and we're not really in the boonies.
No.
Like we're just kind of like, you can see town from our place, right?
Yeah.
But I've also often thought, like if I lived up in Arthur and stuff, you have your farming community, it'd be different. But I'm like, I don't know. We live in a pretty good spot, but.
Even north, even like 20, you go north of 22 and some of those dirt roads in Erin or something. It's like,
So you get isolated. But my wife, she lived in from Guelph.
Yeah.
And when she moved out, and she's like, forgot a item from the grocery store. Like, I'm gonna have to go now. We have to plan.
Yes.
So you don't have to drive back and forth. It is kind of a big problem, but it's like, something you don't think about.
So with the mental health then too, is that awareness on your social media as well?
Yes. So I do post quite often about it. Like I've had my own struggles.
Have you had your own issues with mental
like
health?
anxiety, and it's like worry too much, and it's like, trying to plan things when you can't plan things, that kind of thing. Or I've had my own. I posted this quite a few years ago. I had I do actually a talk on mental health. It's quite a popular one, and I do one on advocacy and how to talk about agriculture in positive ways. So I have two kind of general talks, and sometimes I talk about both in one. But the one on mental health, I talk about a time where I ended up getting a concussion, slipping on the ice. I was actually texting my wife, telling her to be careful because the laneway was slippery. Yeah. And it was right at shore time, and I'm like, I lost my memory for like 30 minutes. It was bizarre. But anyway, I was calling my family over and over again. It was right at short time. My kids were young. They were both in school. My son was apprenticing. So he's at his apprenticeship. My wife was working in a vet clinic. My daughter was at school. And I had this herd of cows to milk. And all I can remember is going to the doctor's office thinking, I need to get back and milk my cows. And they're like, no, you're not going anywhere. And I'm like, well, who's going to do it? Like, it's like, there's no sick days on a. Like, remember my dad having the worst stomach flu ever and just like keeling over and barfing in the barn while milking cows, and just feeling like death and crawling in the barn and lying on the floor in sweats and then having to go back out and feed them. That's because there's nobody else, right? Unless you're, like you said, a bigger farm, you have help.
You got, and you
have neighbors, but they also have their own cattle and stuff to do, right? And they'll be there they'll give you the shirt off their back, but do what they can. But it's when the cows are like their own little individuals and they have their own needs, and you do things a certain way, and you got to look after milk quality, and you got to look after all these things that you want to make sure you're doing a good job.
So like with that stuff, so with mental health, or you'd mentioned anxiety or anything like that, if that stuff comes across for you, like what would you do? Like what would help curb that?
Curb my anxiety? Yeah. So I think farmers actually 54%, I believe, of farmers showed anxiety. which is big. And actually,
you think it's always been there? It's just now we're just
yeah, it's always been
it.
there. So it is that old school kind of mentality of cowboy up.
Yeah.
You know, I was actually at a.
Well, they look like your dad's bloody boot.
I was actually at a meeting.
I wish you had a photo of that.
A meeting a while ago, and there's a young farmer, and he was like, he looked upset, and I was sitting in this group of farmers, older ones, and the guy said, "Hey, what's up with you? You know, like you don't look very happy." He said, "Oh, I was just down in this, and I'm not feeling great." And I could tell he's having mental health issues, and
you can feel.
Like I said, I'm a bit of an empath too.
Yeah.
Right? And the other farmer's like, you just need to work harder, and you know, like it'll go away. When I was your age, we never had time to have mental health issues. You know, I'm like, oh, that's the worst thing you could say to someone, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's so for me, and just to go back to another stat, after COVID, before COVID, 1 in 8 farmers had contemplated taking their life, and after COVID, it was 1 in 4. So the isolation was even worse because you know, you go to fairs, go to meetings, or get together. They weren't allowed to do that anymore, so you were really isolated. So, but anyway, so anxiety, I found, you know, I get anxiety about the weather. Like I'm always looking at the weather. You know, should I cut hay? Is it going to be ruined? Or I have I had a meeting last week for the Agricultural Hall of Fame, and I'm like, what, am I going to be able to get to it? I had a big part to play. Yeah, it's only for a couple hours, but I'm like, you know, and even today for this, I'm thinking like, I'm hoping nothing comes up.
Yeah, like I thought you were going to cancel on me for sure. I'm like, if I could bet, I'm like,
seriously?
I've been chasing you down for like 2 years.
No, I wouldn't do that. Once I commit, I commit.
Okay, good.
But as far as anxiety, I have learned, and I talk about it, you know, taking a little time to yourself. Like I used to take photos of sunsets and stuff on the farm with cows, and I still do sometimes, but now I'll just sit back and enjoy it. Like not worry about taking the perfect photo, you know, just enjoy it yourself. Or we have a farm pond. Like everyone else goes fishing and enjoying it. Why can't I go do it and not feel guilty about taking a minute, right? Or the forest. Like during COVID, we rediscovered it. As a kid, I used to go hiking through there all the time and looking for bugs and salamanders and stuff. And now, you know, when it's not mosquito season, you can go back in there and enjoy it. So and hobbies outside the farm, right? So I don't know if there's an observatory. Have you ever seen the observatory in the back corner of my farm? You can see it from your place. It looks like a shed, but it's a roll-off roof observatory. So one of my hobbies has always been astronomy. I told you I'm a bit of a geek, but it's kind of a dumb hobby for a dairy farmer because you need to stay up late till it gets dark in the summer, and in the winter it's almost too cold, you know. But I love looking into the space and just contemplating life and looking at galaxies and the dunes on Mars and stuff like that, right? So I just love that. But to have a hobby outside of farming. So one of mine is antiquing. I love old Canadian antiques and stuff like that. And anyway, so
so you mentioned, so in terms of the social media, right? You got twofold. You want to educate the public. You want to educate. I mean, it's more of educating farmers about the mental health, right? On that aspect of it. But then you talked about speaking. Like you've gone all over the world, public speaking.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about that. Like, what is that related to both of those issues?
Yeah. So people either want me to speak about mental health, which is generally farm oriented.
So that's a farm crowd.
Farm groups. Yeah, usually. Not always. I've spoken for the Canadian Mental Health Association and some other groups like that, right? Which they want to know more to help farmers. I've talked to groups of doctors that want to know how to get farmers into the hospital or how to talk to them about it, right?
Yeah.
Not hospital, but in to see the doctor and stuff, right? So there are niche markets but groups that want me to talk about that. A lot of it is farm groups. Some farmers are very resistant to it, like, leave us alone, we don't have any issues. You know, you don't care about other people maybe, but and then the other part is advocacy. So that can be farmers or non-farmers. So it could be talking to farmers about how to tell your story in a positive way and make a difference. Or it could be to an urban group, just to talk to them about agriculture or the struggles that we have or the unique struggles. And the mental health could be that way too, right? So, and sometimes it's a mixture of both.
So whereabouts have you gone?
Most of the western provinces. I was supposed to be in BC one year, but it was in the middle of winter, in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, I don't need to do it. Alberta a few times, Manitoba.
And it's free of charge, or you pay?
Yeah, sometimes they pay depending. A lot of it is free of charge. Some of them, it's a donation to Mental Health Association, my choice. Some of the bigger or like government organizations, they just automatically have a stipend kind of thing, and a lot of times I'll just donate that.
Yeah.
But or my travel, I didn't even use to charge my travel time. First time I woke to Alberta, I said I didn't want anything for it. I've never been out there. I want to get out, see mountains. So I went for like a day and came back the next day. Right, that's kind of the life I have. Right, gotta get back for chores. Right, so I went and they said, well, how about we rent you a car and then you go see the mountains. So I went and saw the mountains, came back to my presentation and left. Right.
Yeah.
So, but little things like that are big thing for me. People think it's silly. Manitoba, actually, I'd hurt my back, and there's a museum of human rights there. I wanted to see, right? So I got to go see that. That was kind of cool. A lot in Ontario, and Nova Scotia recently was great. I was supposed to do Australia. Kicking myself for this one. It was it's a long way to go, right? Yeah, and I was busy. And it was
a
like,
hell of an opportunity.
And I had like, kids were young, and I was like, I didn't have any help, and they're like, oh, I need to go, and I'm like, felt so guilty, like and I would I would even go for like a day and come back.
Well, like, how long have you been doing that for?
The social media?
Well, like just speaking in general.
Quite a while, but it's
10
like
years.
Yeah. I don't know. Time goes by quick.
Was your dad a big advocate of that speaking?
He's not. He's a pretty shy, quiet person.
But
I don't think they really understood the social media until near the end. He'd always say, "Oh, Farmer Tim." When he was in his retirement home, like long-term care home, he wanted me to come in and speak, and I was gonna be passed away before that. But he's like, and they were a big part of my presentations. My parents, I talk about their stories and what they're like and their passion and their, working with family and unique things that we do as a family. But anyway, Australia, I ended up doing it. It was going to be a free flight, free 2-week stay tour around, and then I ended up doing it online, and just pro bono. I said, can you send me a mug? And they sent me a mug. But anyway,
there's more to come in the future for sure.
Maybe. South Africa was supposed to happen. That was right before COVID. I never went. I was a little.
Do you ever go into the US?
No, I've done some virtual ones.
Yeah.
US is huge for people on social media advocates. Canada doesn't have very many at my level kind of thing. There's some great ones. I can tell you some great ones, but the U.S. has some really big time dairy farmers, and one in particular, there's two in particular, and they're great. I've kind of talked to them a bit, but they have different focus. One guy just loves to talk about activists, and it's almost like poking the bear kind of thing. And he gets lots of followers, lots of conversation, and lots of farmers following him, and activists attacking him, and he lives for it. And he's made a lot of money on it. He's wrote books on it. And it's like when he started out, he's reached out to me, and I'm like, but it's just not my thing. It's just a different tact. I'm not saying it's good or bad. Another farmer, he's really entertaining and fun, and he's a little bit more for the heart, and he's very popular. But the U.S. ag base and consumer base is so much bigger than ours.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And they actually have a group that will, on their behalf, kind of like reach out. If you need help, you can reach out to them. It's almost like a war center. This is the issue going on. So when you talk about this, is if you need help with your account's got hacked, we can help you with that. Go right to Facebook and help you, right? Where we don't have that here in Canada. It's like you're a lone wolf. I've learned not to open that email, or people are always saying, come on my podcast, we'll pay you $5,000, some famous person that looks legit. I'm not clicking on anything. You click it. Or Facebook saying all the time, you've done some copyright issue, we're going to shut down your page unless you put your credentials in. It looks so real. Yeah. But I've learned, I have a presentation I talk about that, like the safety aspect of those kind of things, right?
So you've done so tell us a little bit about the Farm and Food Champion Award.
Oh, that was kind of neat. That was the first thing. I didn't I remember it's kind of funny. So Farm and Food Care in Guelph, check them out.
Okay.
If a consumer has any question about farming, generally modern farming, they have the answers. And it's a non-for-profit group. And government does give them some money, but most of the major farm organizations are a member of it, and they will lobby on your behalf. But they also are big into education, so they have like a breakfast on the farm thing. It could be at quite often a dairy farm or whatever. But
you should do that.
If I get a new barn, I'd like to do it.
That'd be awesome.
But they're gonna do. They get thousands of people come out to these things, right? And it's so positive, and people get hands on. See things in like real life, because it's hard to get onto a dairy farm. So I'm telling people, like, people are saying, you go see a farm, go talk to a farmer, but it's really not that easy. So if you're in Toronto and you say, hey, go talk to a farmer, like, were you just going to come onto a farm? No, like, there's biosecurity issues, there's liability issues, like, we don't have time for people
to firearms
to come up. Dogs. But so anyway, so it's a group of people in the industry, veterinarians and such, they nominated me for it, and I got this award. So every year they have a champion that do it, and it was a real honor. The Jersey one is funny. It's funny because it was a friend who used to work for the Jersey Association. He got that before he kind of left the association for me. But the farmer I was telling you before, but in the States, he's a Jersey farmer. So I have I have 2 jerseys now. Yeah. But when I got that award, I didn't have any jerseys. So I thought it was kind of funny that the Canadian Jersey Award didn't have jerseys, and the other person that got the award was an American who had jerseys. The Canadian award. So I thought that was pretty neat.
What was it for? Then,
it's just for advocacy, like speaking up for the industry in a positive way. So it's like, I don't know. I just try to be a nice guy. I try to help with my stuff, right? It's not promoting myself, and like I said, I'm not making money on my social media. I love the heartfelt, helping a consumer or farmer, or telling a good story, or just the heart of farming and community, right? So
then the King Charles coronation medal.
Yeah, that was really cool.
That's awesome. So what is that?
What is it? It's so I think there's quite a number of Canadians received the medal. A certain number were for military, a certain number were for service people in the government and stuff, but there was a certain number meant just for Canadian public. Yeah. And you had to do a positive contribution to your community, and it's commissioned from King Charles for his coronation, right? So and one of them give out Canadians. I think there was like other countries had them. There's like only one given out in certain countries. And it was really neat. I went to the Senate. Rob Black, he's a senator, and he's a big agricultural advocate. He got put into the Senate by Trudeau because of his work with 4-H and agriculture. And he gave it to a group of us that day, and we got to sit in the Senate, and you get this kind of a plaque, and you get the medal, and you got a pin that you can put on. The medal can only be worn certain times and stuff. So you should really be calling me sir.
Well, yeah,
sir,
I was going to say.
May. No, just
so
kidding.
Like you so naturally you wear that to the grocery store.
Yeah, it's just, it's people. You kind of they nominated you for it. You had to put in like what you've done for your community. So for me it was community, education, mental health, kind of history kind of thing, right? And a positive effect you've had on your country, I guess.
Do you find the government helps? Like, do you I mean, obviously it depends on which government at what point in time, but do you find the government supports the Canadian farmers overall?
Yeah, they try.
Yeah.
I think we're like one of the biggest industries in GDP, like money makers in Canada, right? But there's a bit of a lobbying powerhouse in agriculture, but also there's so few of us. Like, we're not really, don't have a lot of big voice. So they listen, but I think there's also they listen. There's a lot more power in. We were talking earlier before we started this podcast about the methane emissions. Right?
Yeah.
So they hear from environmental groups and they hear pressure from consumers about, like the problems agriculture, when they're not looking at planes and trains and cars and smog and industry as much, right? It's easy for them to be a scapegoat, whereas I'm not saying there's not an issue, but it's such a drop in the bucket of the methane emissions but we're also providing a service, providing food for the country at the same time.
That's right. Yeah.
Not tourism or not, flying people across the world or anything. It's and we're working at I think the dairy industry is going to be net zero by 2050.
Okay.
So we're working towards it. And Canada's actually got the lowest, I think dairy has the lowest emissions of any country in the world.
So it would be a mixture between public sentiment and which way to go, right? Because if it's a political, sometimes the people that scream the loudest are the ones that get a little more attention, but then I guess too, as a government officials, that maybe they don't know the industry. Like maybe you have somebody in charge that doesn't necessarily know the industry, which happens a lot too.
So for the dairy industry, back when I was on our local milk committee, we would get the MPs, MPPs, and just take them out for a day, take them for lunch, go to see farms, and they're like, "Well, what do you want from us?" And we're like, "We don't want anything from you. We just want you to know what we're doing and saying that we're self-sufficient,
Yeah.
But we're showing you that we don't need help from the government, right? We're doing a great job." But there's other groups like like crop farmers and stuff. Like, of course, there's always issues with trade. I can speak to the dairy industry. You remember back when the last time President Trump was in power, there was the big thing about the dairy industry in the States. And
so it's becoming polarized, right? Like the quotas now are becoming real polarized, where like when people look at, when he talks about the inconsistencies with the trade, dairy is brought up.
Yeah, so he doesn't realize what a drop in the bucket we are to compared to Americans. Like, we're just so small. So the state of Wisconsin actually will produces more milk than all of Canada. Like the state of California has got the same population as Canada. So we're not going to solve their problem, right?
Yeah.
But
like for them to be able to supply consumers without a tax, it's not gonna explode their industry. No.
And they're struggling down there. There's small farmers out there getting pushed out by the big ones.
Which happens here too, right?
Partly because we have the supply management. So we're all kind of have a fair shot. Like there's a bit of economy scale, but there's a lot of small family farms still in Canada and in the U.S. as well. But our average herd size is 90 cows. In the U.S., you have farms with 10,000 cows or thousands, right? And so going back to supply management with the poultry industry, back in the States, the avian flu, which happens here as well. But those farms, they'll have 1 million chickens. It hits one of those farms. And that's why the price of eggs went way through the roof in this U.S. In Canada, we have more smaller family farms, right? Yeah. So there's that less risk. Like supply management really worked for us in that circumstance.
So do you find so for American dairy to come over to Canada, they're taxed, right? How does that,
no.
How does that work? So tell me more. So
actually, that was another fallacy that's been put out. So to the trade negotiation, Trump was talking about, there's 300-400% tax on our dairy, which would never come here if that was the circumstance. So we negotiated that trade with them the last round, and we gave away a bunch of our market. So we lost, as dairy farmers, a bunch of our market to the U.S. We were annoyed with the government. I understand they had to make deals and stuff. But anyway, they kind of threw us under the bus.
So how could you lose the market?
Because we, as dairy farmers in Canadian, we're producing milk for our own consumers.
Yes.
We do a little bit of export, but it's not our major focus. Whereas in the U.S., there's no real cap on how much milk you produce.
Yeah.
So there's
as much as
there's more waste down there because they, if they're overproducing, where's the milk going to go? They get flooded by milk, right?
Yeah.
And then you get paid more if you're a large farmer because there's a volume bonus going to processor.
Yeah.
They'll buy your milk from your farm because you're producing a lot, not just a little bit, right? It's more cost efficient for them. Whereas Canada, it's like I said, we're produce just what consumers need generally. It's rare that we'd have to dump milk. We did once during COVID, but that was because everyone was buying, and then we try to keep the same amount all the time, right? But it's hard to keep up with that. So we lost a little bit of market to that. And
so when you lose the market, like what happens? Like currently right now, is it the American dairy isn't allowed in Canada?
Yeah. So I got back to that previous deal. They were allowed a certain amount of milk to come in, and anything above that, they would get tariffed on.
How much?
It was like a crazy amount.
Yeah.
But no one ever met that because not that much milk came in.
Okay.
So it's not really an issue. They make it sound like an issue in politics. Like it's never met that 300% tariff because they've never come close to that.
Yeah.
So,
but it's in place.
Okay. And they have theirs in place.
It's just they're here, the quota's here, and they haven't even hit it to activate that.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
So they always want to negotiate more, right?
Yeah.
But so I don't know. It's all kind of smoke and mirrors, right? You know, there is that tariff in place, but
the impact is so monumental that or so small that it doesn't make a difference.
No, and it's
and it does, and you do believe that it does keep your market. It keeps these family farms.
Sure.
Because your farm, would you characterize that as a small family farm?
Yes, very much
right?
small. We're half what the herd size is, but I don't think I would be able to farm without the system.
Without the quotas. So how did if it's opened up and American products comes in here, do you think that would devastate our dairy industry?
If it opened up and we lost supply management, yeah, that would.
Yeah.
It would be like Ontario especially is made up of a lot of small farms like mine.
Yeah.
And good or bad, everyone has different thoughts. Some people think maybe you should just be large scale. I hate that you were
free
industrial.
market.
I don't believe industrial farms. I think they're just different size farms, right? They do just as good a job on a big farm as a small farm.
And there's problems with quality on those farms all the time, right?
No, I wouldn't say that. On a large Canadian dairy farm, like say 250 cows, maybe that's a large Canadian dairy farm, is.
But I mean, sorry, in the U.S. when you have
I'm not going to
10,000.
I'm not going to say that either because that's throwing my peers.
I guess
under the bus.
Fair enough.
I think you have to look after cows and to be able to make a living off them and to treat them well. If they want them to produce milk and be healthy, you're going to have to do a good job no matter where you are.
So how does it? So then your quota, right? You produce a certain amount every single week. Or how does that work?
It's kind of monthly. Yeah.
And then so if you have excess, what happens to that?
Excess?
Excess, yeah.
Oh, we try not to have excess.
Okay.
So we have a little bit of a buffer.
Can you drink your own?
I can as a producer. I don't.
But
not that I don't trust it. I grew up on it. But I went to university, I took microbiology. I'm thinking there's always a risk, right? That's why we pasteurize it. And I know I'm not going to get into the raw milk debate, but if you opened up the world, the Canada to raw milk, you're going to see a lot more sicknesses. Right?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
In the States, there actually you can have raw milk farms.
Yeah.
And I have a friend that has produced raw milk in the States, and she said the loopholes and she actually has signed a liability form if you get sick from this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the risk is really high, but there are things that you do check for and that are coming. Like one is Salmonella Dublin, which is a form of salmonella that can be in milk and it can make you sick.
Yeah.
But and listeria, there's other things. I've never had any in our milk that I know of, but there's always a chance, right? You can't see it, so why not take?
So the quote, then the quota. So I mean, so when you have that quota, if there was something wrong with the milk, do you still get paid or no?
No, the only thing that would really be wrong is if there's antibiotics in it. So every truckload of milk goes to a processor's checked for antibiotics. So if there happen to be antibiotics in the milk, it's to your benefit not to have any in there. They can check 1 part per billion.
Where would they come from then?
The antibiotics?
Yeah.
So rarely we use antibiotics in the farm. But say you had a cow that had infection,
Yeah.
fever or something. I don't know. I'm trying to think why would we use antibiotics. But then you have to keep that milk out of the cow and separate for whatever the time period is. It's usually 96 hours, say it was penicillin or something.
Yeah.
And my family drinks milk too. I don't want any antibiotics or anything in it either, right?
Yeah,
My neighbors, and I don't want feeding it to you guys. So study shows that it's out of their system by a certain amount of time, and then you can put it back in for human consumption.
So then, so I guess I had a second thought, but you tell me if you can answer this or not. Does the regulations differ from the U.S.? Like, would you see antibiotics in American milk?
I would say not likely.
Like, they would have very similar regulations.
One of the differences, they're allowed to use RBST, which is bovine somatotropin growth hormone.
Okay.
Cows naturally actually produce the non-synthetic form of it, but you can give them an injection in the U.S. It's banned in Canada, which increases milk production.
Is it banned because of like what's in the milk, or banned because of the harm on the animal?
So the University of Guelph actually did some research way back in the day, and it's not so harmful in an animal per se as in something that it's in it or anything. It's more, they produce more milk, puts more stress on them. They may be more prone to infection or something because of that. Yeah. When I was at Guelph, to be fair, I am very open. I did some research on it in my fourth year, and it can actually help increases production, but lowers the footprint because you're producing either the same amount of manure for more milk and all these kind of things.
Oh, yeah.
It makes more feed efficient, right?
Yeah.
There's a story to everything, but the idea of injecting an animal to boost more milk is not, I don't know, like they already produce good management. We have really good production, right? So I don't know. I think the government does use it as a little bit of a tool to keep milk out. Yeah. But I think unlike consumers, you want your milk pure. You don't want, if it doesn't need to be there, whatever. But so yeah, but the thing is, there's a lot of states that do a great job and farms that do a great job on welfare and management and looking after animals and environment, but there's no consistency across states or across the country like we have in Canada.
Whereas in Canada, it's all across the board.
Yeah. So there's like places in the States that, will still dock tails. Yeah. Not many anymore. Like they'll take, we're not allowed to do those kind of things in Canada. Or if we have to remove something like it's a horn or something, we'll have to use pain management and freezing and stuff. Whereas some don't have to do that. Most do now. It's getting more like that. Yeah. But so I think the dairy industry in the world, most farms do a pretty amazing job. Yeah. But I think Canada we're working hard with our pro-action to prove to consumers we're doing what we're doing. We do it across the board. And then as farmers, we get annoyed when a product comes across the border that doesn't necessarily have the proof of all those things.
Yeah, because you guys are held at a different standard if that was the case.
Yes. I'm not saying that there's not farmers in the States that have the same standard, but it's not across the board, but you don't know where, Yeah. Like there's great farmers everywhere. There's always going to be bad farmers everywhere, but I think as Canadians, we really do a good job because it is our country, our consumers, our families, our communities, Yeah. It's not just access,
Does so I guess with the quota, do you see the quota increasing? Like, are people drinking? I mean, our population's increasing. Yes. But are people drinking more milk? And the reason I ask is because, I do a lot of kitchen table meetings, okay? Sure. And a lot of the times, would you like a coffee? What do you take in your coffee? Yeah. And a lot of the times people don't have, I like cream in my coffee. I'll always say cream and sugar, and if you don't have cream, just sugar. But I like in my head, I would think maybe there's a trend where people aren't drinking as much milk or dairy products. I eat a ton of cheese.
There's definitely a change in demographics, right? So, there's been decreases. I think maybe a decrease. I actually don't drink milk myself. Believe it or not, I'm a cheese and yogurt kind of guy. And I'm lactose intolerant as well. Yeah. Which is kind of weird. It kind of grew on me as I got older, but that'd be tough. But well, mostly bothers just my wife because I still delete everything, right?
Yeah.
So there's a demographic change. So we have to take into account, like, like the kefir and the different products that, people from other countries are used to consuming in their countries. And I think there's an increase in actually real cream.
Yeah.
Butter has always been very popular. People are moving away from margarine a little bit, because it's more processed. But farmers also produce canola and stuff that goes in butter, so I'm not going to bash the product, right? Because and even like almond beverage, nut beverage, it's farmers produce those.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to call them almond milk, but I do support farmers no matter what. But yeah, there's a change. There's definitely the increase every year. They've always, sometimes they'll give us extra quota if there's an increase in the fall, especially during the Christmas market. People are baking more and stuff.
Yeah.
They give us incentive days. Sometimes there's like another day or two of if we can produce extra milk those during that month. They appreciate it. So it's definitely growing. I think our message is getting out there. It's always a challenge with the other stuff and misinformation, especially.
Yeah. It's a lot. Like even as we go through this conversation, like there's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot, and it's like, and farmers are bad. Like I have a slide of it's like fake meat, right? And someone's trying to scare someone away from all the things that are in fake meat. But farmers hate it when people do that about anything out, right? So like, why should we do that? Because it's all safe. It's fine. People have a food choice. The market's going to play itself out. And same with almond milk. I'm sure it's good for you. I'm sure it's gone through all the safety stuff.
My
but
wife
people
drinks it all the time.
But people try to scare you away from it, right? Because like, it's a processed, all this stuff you can't pronounce is in it. But it's, you can make a blueberry sound like a bad thing if you looked at all the chemical components of a blueberry.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, that's a good line. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. I'll send you a picture of what a blueberry. It's got that line.
Send it to me. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
A couple things here before we finish. So, I want to talk about. I want to talk about your herd a little bit. Okay. But I also want to talk about where you're going next. So like questions. Like we talked about Andy, is the key to buy, have a herd of 400 or so I guess like let's talk about your herd and let's finish off with where you're going to go.
All right.
So you've got Holstein herd and you've got 2 jerseys.
Yeah, 2 jerseys and a couple Jersey calves.
Would you get more jerseys?
They're kind of a novelty. We had a neighbor down the road ended up selling out. And we got a couple of the young ones.
And it's a higher fat content.
Higher fat content, not as much production. They're supposedly more feed efficient. They're cute.
Yeah.
I'll put that. And being a tall person and milking the way I do, I have to bend down a long way.
The jerseys aren't the police car cows.
Nope. Those are my belted Galloway. They're kind of my pets.
Okay, those are pets.
Yeah, they're actually a beef breed.
Okay.
I just always wanted.
How many do you have?
Not as many as I did. I've sold a few to other people.
And will you sell them people
just want them
for meat? Or?
Well, you could be, but it's mostly people who just want them from decoration. They're actually the most photographed cow in the world next to Highland cattle.
Like I could have one.
Yeah, they're small. They're very small, slow-growing breed. They're the oldest beef breed of cattle in the world.
Yeah.
They think they were actually crossed with the Dutch belted, the Lackenvelder, which is a dairy breed that looks the same. So they look like them, but they're just we talked about the dairy and the beef. They're like more bony.
Yes.
And produce more milk.
Yeah.
Whereas the beef is actually very milky for a beef breed.
Yeah.
So people use them as homesteading or small farm cattle because they give quite a bit of milk.
Really?
They actually provide really good beef. They're well marbled next to the Wagyu. So the University of Guelph did them for that. So you don't steal any of my cows.
I know. I was gonna say
and they're very
only one I promise.
They're very slow growing, so that's why they're not that popular. They're heritage breed, right?
Yeah.
So I just like the look of them, and they're double hair coat, so they're very hardy.
Awesome. Yeah, they are, right?
Cool,
they are. They do.
Cool.
They look like a big dog.
I actually had a police officer.
Looks like my dog Tuna.
Yeah, they do. Right? Police officer stop and take a picture of one of the ones in the field, and he asked if he could, and I took a picture of his police car, taking a picture of the cow, and I put it in my presentations because I love it so much. And he said they're actually called police car cows too. because they got that stripe, right?
Yeah.
So Oreo cows, police car cows.
That's cool.
Anyway,
So the Holsteins.
The Holsteins are all originated from, like great grandfather or whatever, as far back as it can go. They got moved from the farm in Hornby, and
they've been bred ever since.
Yeah, just increasing in genetics. They get compared every year to the perfect cow. So someone's actually coming this month, compare them to the perfect cow, and then they get a score out of 100. Yeah. So we use that information to improve the next generation.
And then how do you guarantee that there's no like inbreeding or anything like that?
Yeah, there's inbreeding quotients and stuff like that. And it's amazing. So they do a unimating. So I have a milk test each month where we test the milk for fat, protein, all these things. We have that every so many months. We have the classification where they compare them and see how they mature and everything. And we take all that information. It goes in a computer system, and then they do a mating program. So you can actually improve, say, they look at every little thing on the cow, like the crease of the udder, the length of the teat, to the angularity of the bone and the set of the leg, and where the width of their chest and the muzzle. And they take that information and they'll take the bull's information, and then they can match them to improve the next generation. So say she has like a narrow chest, which means that she won't be able to eat as much and maybe not produce as much milk. I'll breed to a bull that has a wider chest.
You should do that with humans.
Yeah, there you go. So or health traits. You can breed for health traits. You can breed for a female, like sex semen. So you could only want females.
Yeah.
That has some challenges with it still, but it's something coming along. So anyway, so that herd is grown. We have a lot of excellent cows.
But the genealogy, like the genealogy, that's the right word, right?
Yep.
That's all the way from like
way back,
like
when.
Your great.
So I could go on my phone.
It could be 4 generations back.
I could go on my phone now and go into Holstein Canada, and I can show you the family trees of every, like it's a family tree, and it tells you all the stats of every cow, their production, and how much milk fat, and their grandmother and grandfather and great granddam. It's called a dam.
Yeah.
And then it's really neat to have. So it takes a lot of pride in that. So we're not a show herd, like we don't do a lot of showing, but I really like to milk nice cows, and it's fun to. It's like people breeding dogs and going to dog shows.
See, I never knew that. I never like. It's amazing that. Yeah, like it's amazing that the herd that you have is like a generational. I mean,
it's neat.
You know, like I think a lot of the public out here that like they wouldn't necessarily think that at all.
And it's like a closed herd too, right? So we don't buy anything in for biosecurity, which is really important right now. So anyway, they're all.
How long do they last?
The cow?
Yeah.
So.
And how long do they milk for?
So that's a good question. So they milk. So what happens is they're born. They're a calf. They're either a bull calf or a heifer calf.
Okay.
And a heifer will go up to be about 13 months. They're mature, reproductively mature. So they'll get bred for the first time. And then they have 9-ish month gestation. So at 2 years of age, they'll have their first calf. And they're fully mature.
Okay.
So 2 years old, like they grow fast, right?
Yeah.
So they're an adult at 2. And then they'll start producing milk after they have a calf. In 90 days they peak, and then they peak off after that. Or then they drop off after that. Then they have their 2 months holiday.
And then they have another calf
every
year.
Every year, just like wild animals, right? So then
so wouldn't the herd get really big then? Like
no, you kind of control
like what
your
happens?
Breedings. You know, you try to have 2 or 3 calve each month.
Okay.
So that's why it's not like a seasonal production. Like in New Zealand, for instance, they try to often will calve all the cows at once.
Yeah.
And then it'll taper off, and then the farmer gets a bit of a break at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But we want to provide Canada with a consistent amount of milk throughout the year, right?
So you have a herd of how many now?
Well, milking cows, there's about 43, 45.
Okay.
And that includes some of the dry cows that are like on their holidays, right?
Dry cow. Okay.
And then young stock. So the young stock will replace some of the older
but
older
2
ones.
years, like you don't start milking them till they're 2?
2, yeah.
Okay.
So you always have some on hand for replacements.
And then how would the older ones, how long would they go? How long would they last?
It depends. Like to be honest, it's as long as they're healthy. And
10 years, 20 years?
Yeah, no, not 20 years. It just depends on the cow genetics. I think the oldest one I've ever had was like 16. 12 is
At 16,
12 is pretty old for a cow.
At 16, do they produce?
They're getting pretty long in the tooth. It's kind of like a person. When you can live to be old age, but what's your health like as you're an old person, right? And welfare is a huge thing. So if their legs start getting arthritic or they get cancer like people, you're gonna euthanize them.
Yeah.
And it's a sad reality. You're gonna have livestock, you have dead stock. And it's probably the hardest thing for me as an empath and as a farmer who actually, we name our cows.
Yeah.
We watch them grow up. We know their cow
You
families.
name all of them?
Yep.
All
Know their
43?
personalities. Yep.
I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm not going to put you on the spot
I
here,
could
but-
tell you, any one of us, Andy and I, could tell you in the field who that cow is exactly. They're very different. They're very different personalities. They look different. And we do have some pets. Like Vanilla, she's like, she has her own social media page. Like, she's retired now.
Yeah.
She's just been living her life out there.
How old is she?
Oh, she'd be 8 or 9 now, maybe.
Okay.
So she retired. She retired young.
Okay. So
she,
8-10 years. Maybe.
Yeah, Andy didn't want anything happening to her or anything, so he decided not to breed her back again and just kind of keep her out there. And we have the Jerseys. He's reattached them. I think they're going to be pets eventually.
Yeah. But does the Jersey milk go in with the Holstein?
Yep. So it just.
Do you have some people, like, are there some breeders, or there's some operations that just have the Jersey cows and people prefer that milk?
Yeah, so there's a farm down, a friend of mine, Little Brown Cow, Ontario, and they have a Jersey herd, and they sell direct to consumer.
Little Brown Cow, Ontario? What is that?
It's called Little Brown Cow. It is like their dairy farm. They started from scratch. They sell direct to consumer, and they sell it's Jersey cows.
Yeah.
They sell non-homogenized milk, so it's pasteurized, but it's like the fat comes to the top. But people love it because they fill up their jugs and they can come there.
And they pasteurize it.
They pasteurize it. You have to pasteurize it on a farm.
Oh, wow.
So it's as close as you're going to get to raw milk because it's not homogenized,
cool.
right? So if you go there, they make their own cheese and stuff.
And they could swear the taste. Like, could you taste the difference?
Oh, well, between Jersey and Holstein?
Yeah.
Probably because it's higher fat, but we have a high fat Holstein herd. But I could taste the difference of, so people always say, like raw milk tastes so much better, but that's because when it, like, say our milk's 5.5% fat, Jersey milk's 6% fat or more, it's rich and creamy, like right from the tank because it's high in fat. But it goes to the processor, they actually take the fat out, then they add 2% back in. So if you get 2% milk, it's 2% fat, not 6% fat.
Okay, wait a minute. Say this to me again.
So back when I was in university, actually they did a survey on people, like, what do you think 2% milk is?
Yeah, I still don't know.
So some people thought 2% milk was like, it's all water and only 2% of it is milk.
Yeah.
Or it's like 98% not milk or whatever, but it's 2% fat.
Okay.
So you have 1% fat, 2% fat. Whole milk is what, 3.25 or something like that. So when it goes to the processor, they take the fat out of the milk and then they put it back in to be 2% because it's so variable between herds.
They take it back out, like they take it out, so it's like 2%, and then they put it back in another batch, or they?
No, they take the fat out of the milk, so it's just like the whey and the milk or whatever, lactose and stuff, and they add the 2% of it, 2%, add it back so that it's 2%.
So it's only 2%. So take the fat out. So whatever the fat content was, take it out and then add it back.
Because it's so variable.
Okay.
Right? Because they want to make it consistent. So, but it's the fat that gives it the rich creaminess taste, right? So milk from the store, I don't mind it, but it's not nearly as creamy as the 5 or 6% fat. I'm not saying you should be drinking 5 or 6% fat all the time, but that's why people think that it's all like back in the day.
But I couldn't get the 5 or 6%.
If you went to this
Little Brown
Cow, and they're
where are they based out of?
Is it Brampton or Brantford? One of the two, Brantford.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have a lot of an ethnic population down there, and they love that as well, right? So,
but you at your place, you'd have it, but then yours wouldn't be pasteurized. It would be just
no. It goes to get pasteurized. There's another farm that has only Guernsey cows.
Yeah.
But they go for A2 milk.
Yeah.
Do you know what A2 is?
No.
So we can actually pick a bull that has A2, and get your cows tested. It's more digestible. So it's a protein that people who are lactose intolerant can often digest. So they sell their Guernsey milk. Guernsey cows are more prone to have A2.
Yeah.
Our Holsteins will have it too, but I'd have to select for that. And then they sell that direct to consumer.
So would they get a better dollar for that?
Probably because they're selling directly at their price, right?
Yeah.
But they got it.
But so people that are lactose intolerant can essentially drink that milk because it's got
yeah. I don't know all the ins and outs about it, but yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So there is A2 milk, I think, in the store as well. You got to pay a premium for it.
Yeah.
So there's all these little things, little niches that people try to have, right? So,
yeah.
Like I thought about doing dairy on my own, as our own little farm, just to our area, because no one else really does it. And I love working to consumers, but it is a lot of marketing. I like being a farmer.
And how do you you get the machinery to pasteurize it?
Yeah, it's like $1 million to get the processing facility.
That's a lot.
And a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
And a lot of extra work because you're going to have to be processing or get someone to do it. But anyway, I know you got to be done
no.
But I was you were gonna talk about where's the farm.
I want to talk about so you got Andy. Where are we at for time?
2 hours 5 minutes.
Oh wow!
Oh, geez.
See, I told you. I've got time. I want to talk about Andy. I want to talk about where you see the farm is going. Let's talk about where your dad saw the farm going to you, and from you to Andy. Most of the sons always have a more they have ambitions of hey, I want this operation or I want this operation. Like maybe Andy wants 400 herds so he can hire to do so he can go to Ibiza.
He'll want everybody wants more flexibility, right?
Yeah.
And just to go back to that, women and egg is a big thing. So it's not always the son anymore.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's like sometimes they call them farm hers or whatever, but I just call them farmers. There's some in the area. Margaret Thompson over here, dairy farmer. Carrie Alexander, she runs the dairy farm over down our road. But anyway, I digress. But so for Andy, my son, he's actually born with part of his hand. I don't know if you knew, but it was a blood clot during development. So you wouldn't know it the way he's working around. So he has no fingers on his one hand.
Really?
Yeah. So, but
all of them are gone?
Yeah, all of them are gone. This part, he said palm. And you wouldn't know it on the videos and stuff he posts because he forks manure with the best of them and throws hay, and there's very little that he can't do, and he milks cows, but it does put an extra strain on your good hand because you're using that more, right? So I do worry about him a little bit. It's very labor intensive the way we do it. It's a little bit traditional. Cows are pastured, they have their own stall, they know it, they go in their own stall with their name, and it's great, and it's great consumer perception and stuff like that. But our problem is it's the same barn my dad milked in when I was a kid. So the last 53 years, it's the same amount of stalls. The only thing that's changed is management and genetics and nutrition.
It's not the original bank barn, right?
It was the largest bank barn in the township. Was
the
there
one that he has?
And the owner that had it before my dad had a tiff with the hired man, and the hired man came and burned it down.
The who?
The hired
hand
burn it down. So I have a picture of it, which I only found a few years ago. I'd never seen it before, but and there was a big barn fire, and it was very sad. So anyway, but we need to grow a little bit, and the barn is, there's a few odd leak in the ceiling, and it's the ventilation's not great in the wintertime, and we want to have the cows to have the best life they can. Yeah. So we're actually thinking about. It's a huge financial investment. Yeah. It'd be between $1.5 and $2 million probably to build a new facility. Yeah. And that's why. And
would you need a new herd too?
No. You keep the same herd, and you would slowly grow into it. I'd grow it. I'd probably put a barn up for 55 or 60 cows. Yeah. And with the foresight to be able to grow down the road, right? You'd never want to my dad built that barn, or didn't build the barn. He moved into that farm, and he said, you'll never fill that barn. You'll never fill the quota. But we did, right?
You did, yeah. So you'd have to have the foresight to maybe 100.
Yeah, but when you keep a small farm, like they say,
just think about it. Hey?
yeah. You want to have that flexibility, and now you can easily probably manage a farm on your own, 100 cows on your own, right?
So this just kind of occurred to me then. So when we talk about quotas, right? People are buying quotas, they're buying the cows, but you don't do that because you don't introduce new. Like,
no,
so
but I have been buying quota just to get ready for expansion.
So you can buy a quota without buying like another farm. Like you can.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can grow on your own farm. So if I build this new barn, I want to be able to maximize it to be able to cash flow what I have. So I need to start buying quota it'll take us a lot of years.
So how, like what if you buy a quota every year? How can you do that?
I can buy every month a bid on it. So like 0.1 of a kilo a month.
And the quota is not the cows, it's the production, it's the milk.
It's production, but it used to be equivalent. 1 kilo of quota would be about a cow. It's not quite, so depending on your fat.
But you could do 1 cow a month.
No, 0.1 of a cow a month.
Sorry.
0.1 of a cow a month. Like, I can't buy a kilo of quota a month.
Yeah.
I can only buy, with the bidding, about 0.1 of a kilo.
Okay.
So it would take me...
So how many for a full cow?
If 1 kilo equals a cow, just roughly.
It's 0.1 of a kilo.
If I can only bid and get 1.1 at a time.
Okay.
So it takes a long time to get that 1 kilo's worth for an extra cow. So if I wanted to produce an extra cow's worth, it's going to take 10 bids, 10 months to get enough cow. Kilo to get for that extra cow.
Wow. That takes, okay. So, but can you buy a quota from somebody else without buying their herd?
No, there's some provinces you can lease quota.
Yeah.
If you buy a farm, you can buy the quota with the farm, but a certain amount of that quota has to go back to the quota exchange.
Why?
Just to give. That's a good question. I don't know. But also gives other farmers an opportunity to.
Could you buy, like, if you built a new barn, could you buy another quota and put them in the old barn?
Like.
You could buy someone's quota, you buy someone's herd, or is that not?
No. There's all kinds of rules and regulations.
Oh.
So I have a friend who actually bought a herd of cows.
Yeah.
And is milking on a farm, and he wants to move to another farm, but he has to milk there for 5 years.
Yes.
Before he can transfer. Just
but he had to buy the farm.
Well, he bought it with somebody, but
yeah,
anyway, it's a unique circumstance. But they have all kinds of rules and regulations. It's so make it fair for people, right?
Yeah. So for Andy then, or just the family in general, like your daughter, she doesn't farm.
No, she was great on the farm growing up. It's great work ethic, great person. She's very much like me with her empathy and she's a good person. But she went through university, and then is doing a college course now, and she wants to work with adults with exceptionalities. Because you have a brother, I have a sister with special needs, and I think that inspired her. But she just is that kind of a person that likes to make a difference in the world, right? So that's what she's working now, and we're talking down the road. If we built this new facility, she's going to bring some of her clients or whatever to the farm, right? Yeah. So I think that's a nice way to tie in the farm girl with the, that stuff. So, but we're hoping to keep things small. Andy and I are both kind of old school. We love pasture. New barns are so nice now that cows don't want to go out and pasture because they're just like resorts for cows. Like, we'd probably build a pack barn where the cows, they just wander around and lie on this pack of sawdust.
Yeah.
And it's as close as you can get to pasture. We'd still allow them to go out and pasture if they want to. Then they can go eat when they want. We'd probably put in a robot. Yeah. A single robot can milk 50, 60, maybe 70 cows if you're lucky. The cows go and get milked whenever they want.
So if you put the robot in, then it saves time for you guys.
It gives flexibility. Your time is being put into different things. Yeah. More management stuff. Not that we don't do a lot now, but it needs maintenance, right? Yeah. So it's just going all 24 hours a day. The disadvantages between now, we milk our cows twice a day, and then we're done. whereas a robot's always going on call.
Yeah.
And it has the phone will call you, say if there's a problem. And if that problem with the robot, then all those cows are getting backed up, right?
Yeah.
So,
but the robot, like, you don't move the robot. The robot moves itself. The cows are positioned, and
the robot stays in the spot. The cows just wander over and into the robot because they want to get milked. There's a little treat in there for them too. It tells their collar. And if they've already been milked recently, it just kicks them out.
Oh,
says,
that's
hey,
cool.
You're milked. And then and actually on average, I think it's like 2.7, 2.9 times the cows come and get milked in a day. So
Yeah.
you get a little increased production.
Yeah.
Because they're getting milked more
Because you're not
often.
doing it twice. Oh, that's cool.
It's really cool. I should take you to see one.
Yeah,
It's
no
not
kidding.
far away.
So then, so I guess you don't have any plans of retiring. Like, you're going to leave the farm in a pine box. And
Don't tell my wife that.
Yeah, and oh yeah.
She's probably going to watch this. She's like, I'm going to retire when I'm 55.
Right, and then but Andy's idea is to full blow. Like, he's gonna get into it. Like, he's already there.
Yeah, he's there. He's got a lot of learning. Like, the neat thing about farming is, I went to school. I got a bit of education. You learn most of it from family and learn to do by doing, the 4-H model, right? But like, he took a different path. He mechanics apprentice for a mechanic. He doesn't have the farming background except for me, but he still is working with the veterinarians. He still sees the nutritionists come out. He still talks to the accountant. So he's still getting that hands-on experience. So it's a learning curve for me. The technology is going to be big for me, not as big for him because of his generation, but it's going to take this technology and improve the work quality and lifestyle to keep people in agriculture, young people, because I think the average age of a farmer now is like 50s or something like that. It's like crazy high because people are moving away. Like, there was a time everyone was a farmer, but now there's like so few of us. But it's that technology and the lifestyle that keeps people farming, but it's the increasing and better technology and more flexible lifestyle that is bringing people back.
And that's what people want, right? Like, that lifestyle demand, like, you're always on the farm, like your dad, always on the farm.
Yep.
And a lot of these younger guys, the culture changes. They want to go and do stuff.
Well, I would like to
freedom,
too.
Right?
I want to be able to go with my family. I want to do something, and it's not that having
go see the mountains for a day and come home. Come
right.
on, right?
It's not like, or go to the Dawe's cottage. Or
yeah,
something.
that's right.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
But it's not that it's going to make it like you can just go away.
Yes.
But it's going to make it more flexible. So if we're doing hay during the day, and you always have to stop for that milking time, you can keep going and maybe do some of those things later on.
Yeah. And a larger herd might give you the income to hire as well, right?
And I don't think we'd actually necessarily get a larger herd. Like, going from 43 cows to 50 cows isn't larger.
Yeah.
We might get more production out of those to be able to help cash flow it. But it's hard to get labor on farms now. Like, at all. Like, in the States, they get a lot of foreign workers, and that's why they're not liking the new rules and laws of all the illegal people working, because the farmers are losing their help, and they can get cheap labor. In Canada, it's really hard to find people to work on farms, and because it is a unique lifestyle, there's challenges. You don't stop for weekends, or if it's raining, you're doing stuff, right? But so by having more technology, then you are going to be able to do more with your family as a family farm, and keep it viable into the future, and give the cows, like my son and I both, we want cows to be cows. Yeah. We want them the best life they can have, the best welfare they can have, and we're doing that now, but I think we can even do a better job with a newer facility, just because it's going to be cow oriented, right? A lot of people call them cow palaces. Yeah. Like the ventilation, the milking on their go, the feeding more often during the day. It's like it's in a better environment for the farmer too. Yeah. So you want a place to go that you enjoy working, right? So
that's it.
That's it. So you should become a dairy farmer.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, no, it's
go.
great.
We'll go into partnership.
Man, I'm exhausted. Even like all the red tape, and in my head when you're talking, I'm like, I keep thinking about all the work, all the labor intensive work, but then after that, you've got to go and do the book works, and you've got to record the quotas, and you've got to, you know, like the vets. Like, it's not just like you're running a business on top of doing the labor.
Yeah, and it's different than other industries like livestock industry and dairy farming. And like, we have our cows milk every day, but then come spring, a small farm like mine, especially, we do our own planting and our own cultivating, and then we do our own hay 3 or 4 times a year, and then we do our own corn harvest and our own grain harvest and our own straw and our own field work, and it's like, it's all the way up till Christmas, right? So there's no real break. And then come winter, the cows are inside more, so there's more chores in the barn. It takes longer, more physical. So it is definitely not for everybody.
Yeah.
It is. There's times that I thought, you know, I remember telling my dad, like, I need a break, I need to get away, and he's like, it'll get easier next week, but it never does. You say that forever and ever and ever, right?
It's a good line.
But I have no regrets, because it's like, it's a great place to raise a family. You're making a difference in the world, I think, you know, environmentally, and you're feeding consumers and your friends. I believe in the product. I believe in the research. I believe in the animal welfare. Like, I enjoy working with animals and caring about animals, and making it a better world for animals and for people. Battling the misinformation is challenging and stressful, but it's also rewarding. And
it's a necessity too.
Yeah,
right?
and on social media, the mental health part, it's like, I've had a number of people come up to me and say, something you've said or posted have saved my life. I had a gentleman, I won't name names, from the community come and drop off a gift to me and give me a big hug, and he said, you know, I wouldn't have been here if you didn't say what you did the other day. And I'm like, wow. So that keeps you going back to it.
And realistically too, all it takes is one. Like, that's it. Right? It's worth it for one person like that.
Yeah, and then if you're, like I said, I don't make money on my social media. I try to keep the integrity. I talk about my emotions and friends, but by doing that, I think people have some trust in me as a person. So I'm not going to lie to them or say something that's an untruth just for my benefit, right? Yeah. So they find it as a source to come to that's unbiased. I don't have all the answers, but I'll send them somewhere that people will know, right? So,
but you've got a good name, like Farmer Tim.
It's right. But it's also something, you know, I'm kind of sort of semi-retired from it, trying to get away from it a little bit, but kind of get pulled back in.
Keep going,
because people are like, oh, are you okay? You know, I haven't heard from you for a while. I worry about you, or you're the reason I get up in the morning. And I'm like, oh, I'm just a hick. I'm pretty shy, actually, by nature. I just like to be home. I'm a homebody. Like I said, I do public speaking, but it's not in my nature. I do well at it, and I enjoy it when I'm there, but I get knots in my stomach because I don't want to be the person out there, the showy person. I just want to help people, right? So, and
if anybody's out there and they want to buy him a drink, he loves sours.
That's right, I do.
Sours.
Or ciders.
Or ciders.
Or chocolate milk. Chocolate milk even better. Making sure the little blue cows on there.
Well, this has been great. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
You weren't scary at all.
Okay, that's good.